Chapter 223. When the Allied soldiers set foot on the land of planet Chitauri, there was only a planet shell supported by nanoengineering machinery. The ground was full of high-temperature and high-pressure burning crystals. The entire planet's surface had dropped by more than 120 meters on average. The huge three-phase teleportation gate behind them had been expanded into a low-Earth orbit artificial celestial body. Of course, its mass and material came from the dismantled parts of planet Chitauri. The Chitauri, as for the Chitauri, most of them had become part of the crystals under the Allied soldiers' feet. The light plague, a weapon with the goal of extinction, had turned the planet into a land of death. Perhaps only the depths of the earth and the ocean trenches might have some simple life forms, such as bacteria and algae. The Academy of Sciences was dismantling the equipment left by the Chitauri. Most of it was in outer space. Earth's technological development had exceeded the normal law of development due to Ch'en-Eng's interference. Humans had too much homework to make up for. Mankind was able to create weapons and technologies that could destroy the heavens and exterminate the Earth, such as the light particle virus and the dimensional teleportation gate. However, the nanomachines were still made from titanium alloy. The higher-grade metal material, adamantium, had attributes that were worlds apart from the basic industrial materials. The disparity had reached a shocking degree. The technology of the Chitauri would be the focus of human technological breakthroughs. It was foreseeable that with the simulation of technology in the virtual low-latitude world, the Republic's speed of catching up wouldn't be slow. A large number of scientists had given up their existence in the higher dimension and inserted their consciousness into the virtual low-latitude world. They made use of the convenient space-time control and reality modification technology to accelerate the development of science and technology. Yang Qi was a scout platoon leader in the Republic. Of course, due to the development of dimensional technology, space-time wars, and interstellar exploration, this type of soldier had a new development. Dimensional soldier. With the personal system of the Republic as their main tool, they were committed to environmental exploration and the development of survivability. Analysis, exploration, disguise, ambush, decapitation, infiltration, construction, and development were all developed. They were known as a one-man army, a high-end soldier of a single civilization. The most basic ability required a space-time beacon to connect to the Republic on a completely unfamiliar planet and space-time. Of course, Yang Qi was still a trainee dimensional soldier. This type of soldier was still being explored and developed. His partner was a Soviet Red Army soldier, Barshak Petrovich Trotsky. Among the three communist countries, the Soviet Union's war technology was the most violent and direct. Barshak's equipment was a 4.2-meter-tall personal armor made of secondary adamantium. More than half of Barshak's body was a cyborg, and most of his body had been modified by metal prosthetic. This made him the only one in the team who could survive in outer space. These Black Star troopers from the Soviet Union had undergone genetic surgery. About 20 superhuman organs were implanted, including a prefabricated stomach-decomposing furnace, a biochemical parietal brain, and a cold core furnace. The troopers who completed the surgery would be over 2 meters tall, and they would only return to normal when they retired. Barshak was over 2.5 meters tall. Even his muscles were made up of muscles. Like most of the muscles in the body, the cavernous body was replaced by artificial high-strength bionic fibers. Such strength and combat power were indeed formidable. However, Yang Qi didn't understand. Did Barshak's reproductive organs still exist? Did he expect them to be used as weapons or food to replenish his energy when he ran out of ammunition? The Supreme Commissar and General Secretary Yuri fired more than 1,000 nuclear weapons here. Barshak looked at the crystallized craters around him and explained to his comrades, the main purpose wasn't to destroy the Chitauri army, as most of them were already dead, but to solve the radiation problem of this planet. Brooke from the European community pretended to be helpless and said, "Our radiation weapons killed most of the life on this planet. Even the bacteria in the surrounding environment came from Earth. But the environmental problem you left behind is very serious. Even if the radiation source is gone, the remaining radiation is still fatal. It will take 15,000 years for the biological population to recover, not because the radiation has disappeared, but because life has adapted to the environment here." Barshak sneered mercilessly. He said proudly, "Only the great General Secretary, Commissar Yuri, thought of a solution. Using nuclear bombs." Yang Qi sneered. "This is indeed a good idea, but what about the high radiation? Blow it up. Using nuclear fusion to clean up the nuclear radiation, what a genius idea. Nuclear bombs are a good thing." Barshak didn't care about Yang Qi's mockery. He took a sip of antifreeze. This was real antifreeze, a good thing to protect his biological organs. The Soviets made it into vodka-flavored, and the Black Star troopers couldn't live without it anymore. He said, "We can use it to repair dams, extinguish fires, attack enemies. It can do anything." Then Barshak looked into the distance with some sadness. Now these treasures are gone. The General Secretary cleared out all the nuclear weapons on Earth, the old Soviet Union, Russia, and the great new alliance's emergency processing. They all fell here, and the damn Chitauri defense made these treasures useless. They can't even destroy the Chitauri cities. The development of energy technology means that these old weapons can only be used for cleaning purposes. However, he soon got excited. "Thankfully, we have new treasures. Neutron fission bombs, proton bombs, the yield is endless." Yang Qi adjusted his sitting posture. He didn't care about the weapons that Barshak mentioned. The entire alliance recognized that the Republic was the strongest. It might not be as violent as the Soviet Union or as mysterious as the European Union, but it had the most advanced technology, the most complete, the most advanced, and the most comprehensive. Yang Qi's personal equipment might not be as powerful as Barshak's mobile armor and modified prosthetics, but in the hands of the Republic soldiers, it was even more terrifying. Personal armor, or rather, the weaponized version of the personal system, used the external quantum computing system of the human body as the core. It was loaded with the quantum entanglement of the citizens of the Republic in an extensional structure. In an informal explanation, it was a quantum computer that was loaded on the phenomenon of the human soul, supplemented by an intelligent nanorobot system. Two simple structures, the computing core and the application system, supported by the huge amount of scientific data in the quantum computer database, could be said to be omnipotent for the dimensional warriors. After the core was loaded with adamantite nanorobot, they could dismantle mecha with their bare hands, create nuclear bombs by themselves, and replicate a standard war base in a short period of time. Using the famous game Red Alert as a template, it was a more complete production base. Given enough time, it wasn't impossible to replicate a modern country run by intelligent robots in an Earth-like environment. With advanced technology, the development of productivity would be limitless. This was also one of the reasons why communism in the Republic was able to develop so quickly. Most of the citizens with personal equipment could produce most of society's products by themselves. For the first time, labor and means of production became a concept. The country could go deeper into the production of high-end technological products, but the citizens could produce most of the things they needed. The energy used for production was limitless. Other than some frightening technologies, such as dimensional technology and space technology, humans no longer lacked energy. Matter could be reused. In this kind of situation, people could distribute according to their needs. Even if they didn't distribute, they could still produce by themselves. For the first time, humans lived together because of the need to live together. This was the best era for humans, other than the threat of the apocalypse. Everything was perfect. Any citizen of the Republic was richer than the richest person 5 years ago. Given enough time, he alone could match the productivity of the entire Republic of 5 years ago. The biggest crisis for the Republic was the apocalypse. However, the second biggest crisis was, what reason did the Republic have to continue existing? The citizens didn't need a country anymore. With the threat of the apocalypse, this country still had a reason to exist. It was for survival. However, without the apocalypse, what organization and form of society would mankind use to progress? Survival and development were the eternal needs of mankind. The final organizational situation of mankind was inevitably related to these two. The apocalypse told mankind that there was no place in the universe that was safe. There was only one possibility for mankind to perish. After communism was achieved, mankind needed new pursuits and thoughts. The former required mankind to establish organizations to ensure their survival in the multidimensional universe. The latter required mankind to redesign a set of ideological and political systems. Chapter 224. Be careful. The Academy of Science has detected a small fluctuation in the spatial stability of planet Karita today. The energy fluctuations on our bodies may cause abnormal spatial warping. Yang Qi was wrapped in a silver haze, and a glowing liquid substance flowed out of the light blue electromagnetic ejector, propelling him into outer space. This was the flight system of adamantium nanomachines. These tiny nanomachines might not be much on their own, but once they were replicated in sufficient numbers, it would be a terrifying thing. The fog of light around Yang Qi was actually produced by the distortion of light by a spatial force field. The powerful microscopic force field between the nanomachines extracted energy from space, forming a domain around him that did not look big, but was actually very vast. Not only could this spatial bubble play a very powerful protective role, deflecting laser weapons attacks in the vacuum, but it could also control the movement of matter within it. The Republic had entered a life-sustaining program into the nanomachine system, which could even provide the environment needed by the human body in very extreme environments. If it wasn't for the limited production of adamantium, the Republic wouldn't even need to build spaceships. In fact, this spatial bubble had become the research focus of the Republic's next generation of aerospace technology. Compared to the clumsy, massive spaceships, this interstellar weapon had a much better price-performance ratio. Of course, because the spatial bubble couldn't carry enough matter, spaceships were still very important. Matter was an extremely important resource in the universe. During a voyage, it was possible to travel for more than a dozen light-years, or even hundreds or even tens of thousands of light-years without finding a single material planet. For a civilization at the level of the Republic, matter was energy, matter was materials, and matter was everything needed for survival. Now, only spaceships as large as cities could provide enough matter. Even larger spaceships were still being built. The Academy of Science had already planned to select moon-sized asteroids from the Karita system's meteorite belt as materials to build mothership. In the Republic's vision, a single-person spatial bubble would be the main combat unit. Other large offensive weapons, such as winged fighters, floating cannons would be used as supplements, and starships the size of planets would be used as mothership. Forming a starship fleet was the future development direction of the Republic. Therefore, this single-person spatial bubble system would only be used within the system. Yang Qi's team was responsible for cleaning up the outer space of planet Karita, killing the remaining enemies, and searching for technological products and supplies. Each of them had different methods of navigation. Yang Qi had the most comprehensive and advanced spatial bubble system. Only the Republic of China had the ability to provide such a thing. The other allied nations were still far behind in their research in space technology. Balshak's outer armor was like Iron Man, propelling itself through the magnetohydrodynamic jets hidden in his hands and feet, allowing him to fly through the universe. They were European community soldiers from France and Italy. Brooke and John had no choice but to follow behind them. After all, the technology of the European community was the most advanced among the Allies. It was as if their technological system had not been affected by the apocalypse, stubbornly and rigidly following the predictions of science fiction on Earth. Spaceships, firearms, melee laser weapons. I think I found something. Barshak called his teammates over to take a look. If the cloaked man who died outside the portal of Zatari could see it, he must have recognized the object lying in the wreckage of the snake-shaped spaceship. It was the beacon that Loki used to contact him. This is space trash captured by the spacecraft wreckage. Look, this is an impact crater. Yang Qi waved his hand, and the key-like metal object flew into his palm. It doesn't look like a fragment, nor is it a weapon. It's worth collecting. That's good, Barshak complained. The people of Zatari are a group of war maniacs. They can't even be called civilized. Technology is only developed in areas related to war. There is basically no other scientific research system. The command thinks that they may be part of a huge civilization, pitiful creatures who have been deprived of their own civilization. Brooke pondered for a moment before coming up with an adjective. Just like the slave legions of ancient Persia. An army composed of aliens, but the scale of such an army has expanded to a terrifying extent in the universe. Their entire race was conquered, their civilization was destroyed, and then they became an army to serve a behemoth civilization. The Allies had guessed most of the situation. The only thing they didn't expect was that it was not a huge civilization, but a person, an individual Terminator. On Earth, Loki walked through the banquet scene with small step. Sir, you can't go near here. 2 sturdy security guards stopped him from approaching. This was a staircase leading to a closed area. Can you show me your invitation? Loki waved the cane in his hand and smiled. I don't have that. Please come with me. The security guard signaled his companion to take his place and said to Loki. Loki looked at him mockingly as if he was looking at a tickling bug. He sneered and said, "Stupid earthling." He raised the cane in his hand that had transformed into a cane, weighed it, and smashed it hard on the poor security guard's abdomen. The sound of bones breaking came from under the cane. The strong security guard bent over like a shrimp. His internal organs were broken, and blood mixed with dark red pieces of internal organs spurted out of his mouth. Loki's expression was morbidly excited. He said to the body on the ground, "You need to learn how to talk to your new master." Loki killed another security guard who tried to pull out a gun and drove the screaming crowd out. It will take a few minutes for those idiots from SHIELD to arrive. I don't know when they will find out that I'm not in SHIELD's cell. Loki was suddenly in a trance, but he quickly recovered. Oh? Already know? Then the next riddle is Hydra. I can't let you disturb Eric. Loki tried to contact Zirida while casually killing humans. The cane in his hand emitted a blue light that hit the human body. Even the body was difficult to preserve. There was no response from Zirida, which made Loki a little puzzled. The night view of the German streets quickly faded away from him, and the surroundings became very dark, just like in space. Yang Qi's team was surprised to find that the metal keys in their hands began to glow, and the surrounding space slowly shrank, making Yang Qi feel that the space bubble was unstable. Loki! A blue figure fell from the sky and blocked Loki's attack with the round shield in his right hand. He swung the shield in his hand and hit Loki's chest heavily. Loki, who was caught off guard, lost control of the cane and fell to the ground. The cane fell from Loki's hand, and the light of the gem on it began to flicker erratically, as if a large amount of energy had been taken away out of thin air. It dimmed, and energy shot out from the gem, and a strong explosion occurred between the two. Loki reached out to block the beam that was coming at him, and Captain America also hid behind the shield. After the dazzling light dissipated, a tall figure first appeared in the sight of the two. He was wrapped in metal armor, and the ferocious armor exuded naked violence. Next to him was a young man with an Asian appearance. He was wrapped in a glimmer of light and looked around in surprise. Chapter 225. The sudden change in space and time made Yang Qi feel a little dizzy. He opened his eyes and found himself standing in a familiar yet strange place. Beside him were high-rise buildings, and beneath his feet was the asphalt road. The exclamations and noises of humans rushed into his mind in a chaotic manner. From the space of another world to the streets of Berlin's bustling city, Yang Qi felt as if he had fallen into a dream. He really could not tell if this was real or an illusion. Ever since the advent of the apocalypse, it was as if everything had been buried in the dust of history. Although it had only been a few years, seeing these scenes in his memory again made Yang Qi feel as if it was a lifetime ago. Barshak was next to him. The big guy looked good and was looking at everything around him in high spirit. Yang Qi also noticed the German words on the shop signs next to him. Thanks to the loading of the Republic's personal system, he knew all the languages on Earth, including several alien languages collected in the database. These knowledge and skills were loaded into his quantum phenomenon soul outline. It was deeper than his memory, just like his innate wisdom and instinct. There were no side effects. This is Earth. Yang Qi was somewhat puzzled but also somewhat certain. He was familiar with everything here to the bone. The database of his soul periphery could find countless pieces of information that matched this place. There were identical street photos, satellite photos, and virtual models of the old world's sand tables. This is Berlin. A man wearing a star-spangled blue tight-fitting suit came up to him and asked politely, "Who are you people?" Yang Qi looked like a shadow shrouded in light and shadow, while Barshak, who was beside him, was even more so wearing a mobile armor. The malevolent mechanical creation completely embodied the aesthetics of a warring race, the violence, terror, and malevolence of a war machine. Coupled with his strength and height that exceeded the limits of human beings, no one would believe that they were humans. Even the most human-like European community warriors. When they got out of the sci-fi aircraft, they were not convincing at all. Captain America vigilantly guarded against the man who looked like an Asian in front of him. He knew that there were many aliens who looked similar to humans, like Loki, who was being hunted. The Asgardians looked exactly like humans. I can't contact the command, but the spatial spectrum here is very familiar. It seemed to be the world on the other side of the three-phase teleportation gate. We might have been sucked in by the portal's space-time passage. I don't know who set up a space-time beacon here, but the portal has anchored us here, Bruce informed everyone through the earpiece. Execute standard exploration procedures and act according to circumstances, Yang Qi ordered. The team stood between Captain America and Loki, so that neither side dared to act rashly. Captain America was worried that they were Loki's accomplices, and Loki was very afraid of the people behind them who suddenly teleported them. The stalemate didn't last long, and soon Loki felt impatient. He didn't pay attention to these people who suddenly appeared. In other words, he had never considered anyone other than Asgard and a few other existences as trouble. What he had just done was out of the schemer's instinctive vigilance against unexpected events that disrupted his plans. Loki looked gloomily at Yang Qi and the others. He said to them with a cruel smile, "If you are unintentionally involved in this dispute, then we are not enemies. This is Thanos' conquest of humanity. His will is being thoroughly carried out, and I am the master of this planet beneath your feet. By the order of the great conqueror of the universe, the king of war, Thanos, I will be the king of the world." At this point, Loki deliberately paused and leaned forward slightly. In an inviolable tone, he said to Yang Qi, "Now tell me, are you friends or enemies? Or have nothing to do with it? The planet under your feet, are you talking about the Earth?" Yang Qi did not react too much to the word Thanos as Loki imagined. Instead, he asked a self-evident question with an inexplicable doubt. "You said you were the king of the world, because an existence called Thanos gave it to you? Loki's words reminded Yang Qi and others of an important piece of information. Loki felt impatient, and he barely maintained his aristocratic demeanor, that exaggerated and artificial sense of the stage. Are you confused about the authority of Thanos? Or because of a little sympathy, you are indignant about the future fate of the indigenous people on this planet, which makes you try to question its authority? Question my status and appointment? It seems that you don't know the meaning of the name Thanos. What do we want to know? Do you know that what it says is the law of the universe? Yang Qi's face was expressionless. It's not just the law. It's the universal principle of the whole universe, a kind of fate, an unquestionable fate. The fate of the earth is to be ruled by me, and the fate of mankind is to be conquered by me, because I am God. Forget it, humans are the same and you are the same, always like to question me. I could have let you know what a big mistake you have made. Loki raised his scepter and said, but I'm tired of it. The scepter returned to its original shape, and the sharp blade at the top was made of Asgard metal, which could easily cut through alloy armor and block energy radiation attacks. Loki's speed was very fast. The Frost Giant's physical fitness was stronger than Captain America's, and the Asgardians' combat skills were far superior to those of the Earth. But the scepter was blocked a full meter away from Yang Qi. An invisible force field wrapped around Loki's scepter and firmly locked it in place. The space was like a sticky gel, and the harder Loki stabbed, the greater the resistance. He managed to move 2 meters forward, but he couldn't go any further. Captain America's reaction was also very fast. Without hesitation, he took off the shield on his right arm and threw it at the back of Loki's head, but Loki caught it with one hand. The strength of the Frost Giant was fully displayed. A hoarse voice like thunder rang out. Do you think this thin layer of barrier can stop me? I'll let you know what a big mistake you have made. Loki's voice made the air tremble, and it sounded like it went straight into the souls of several people. Go to hell. Before Loki's roar fell, he was hit in the back of the head by a lump of alloy the size of a human head. Even with his extraordinary physique, he felt his vision go black, and then a series of consecutive blows, 2 real iron fists accurately hitting every place defined as a human's vital point. Barshak used the wrestling technique he learned in the army to constantly hit Loki's vital points, while at the same time destroying his body's balance, so that his body was always in a state of adjustment. Captain America could always make up for the previous blow at the most appropriate time, so that Loki had no chance to react. Fortunately, Asgardians still had magic, or Loki would be the first alien in the divine realm to die from human martial arts. Using the power of the soul gem, Loki made a mistake in the two's consciousness. His hands were inevitably a little off, and there were some problems with their coordination. That was how they got out of this state. Do you know anything about Apocalypse? Loki heard the voice behind him, and a sense of danger that made his tailbone tremble firmly enveloped him. Through the ESP, Loki saw Yang Qi's palm aimed at the back of his head. The energy gathered, and the feeling of tearing space let him know that it was not something fun. Yes, Loki answered honestly. He raised his hands, indicating that he did not want to resist. Please don't be agitated, I surrender. You can arrest me. Look at what you've done. Captain America gritted his teeth. Loki looked around at the wounded and dead bodies around him, and said dryly, I'm sorry about this, but you can't kill me. But you can't kill me. I'm an Asgardian, a diplomat. You have to judge me for my crimes together with my father Odin. I don't care who you are, Yang Qi said behind him. I just want to ask, what is your relationship with Apocalypse? I've only heard of him. Apocalypse and his 4 horsemen will bring unprecedented disaster to the universe. He has hurt many people and destroyed many civilizations, but that has nothing to do with me. I am also his enemy, and Asgardians will fight him to the death. If you have a grudge against him, then we should be friends. Loki wanted to turn around, but the infinite rising warning in his heart reminded him that it was better not to do so. Liar, you betrayed Asgard. Captain America exposed Loki's lie. Since you have nothing to do with Apocalypse. Yang-Chi controlled the nanomachines to cover Loki's head. The creepy touch made Loki very uncomfortable. He always felt that there was a sun behind him that would explode at any time, and the surrounding space began to become unstable. The power that could tear him apart was like a knife on his back. Chapter 226. Lady Stormsword stepped into the void outside of Neptune. The energy storm behind her was like a prairie fire, pouring down in torrents. Although there was not enough time to brew, the radiation concentration and intensity of the cosmic storm had not reached its limit. It was not comparable to the radiation storm in the natural state of the universe, but it was enough to trigger a solar storm that swept across the solar system. Violent energy surged and surrounded Lady Stormsword, causing her small figure to expand thousands of times. Her body made of pure energy was like a god or a spirit. Apocalypse, you may not be invincible. The last thing you should give us is time. As Lady Stormsword roared in anger, the energy outline outside her body completely faded, merging into the crazy solar storm. On the other side of the SHIELD headquarters, Nick, Hill, and the others had long been frightened by the series of detection data. Once a solar storm of this scale was formed, it would be enough to melt the surface of all the planets in the solar system. Anything above -3,000 meters above sea level would melt into magma. They could not have predicted this kind of disaster at all. The response measures and disaster emergency procedures were just a joke on paper by the NASA. Lady Stormsword's complete outbreak did not pose any threat to Chernong, but it almost scared the people on Earth to death. Why can't the space-time corridor be activated? Do you know that this will make most of SHIELD's response measures completely ineffective? Without space-time backtracking, we will lose this most important link. Our plan to save Earth will fail by at least 3/4. Didn't you tell me it was foolproof? Nick roared at his subordinates agitatedly. His black face was flushed red as he questioned them angrily. There's a higher-level interference source. 10 minutes ago, the space-time interference curve fluctuated greatly. The interference value suddenly exploded, and the entire timeline cannot be stabilized to the extent that we can travel through time. I'm not asking you what the reason is. I'm asking you if you have a solution. Maybe Stark has a solution. Bang! Nick pressed his subordinate heavily against the wall and glared at him with his remaining eye. Do you have any more bad news for me? Yes, sir. The solar storm may just be a prelude. Its purpose is to trigger something even more terrifying. Nick looked at him silently and suddenly asked him calmly, "What is the prelude?" It's the charging of the electromagnetic cannon before firing, and the ignition of the nuclear bomb before it explodes. The detonation of an atomic bomb before a hydrogen bomb explodes. Feeling the pressure on his neck getting stronger and stronger, and hearing his neck bone wailing, the researcher didn't dare to say anything more. He quickly spat out the truth. The solar wind is only increasing the temperature of the sun and then heating up the core of the sun. Once the core temperature reaches 100 to 200 million degrees, the nuclear fusion of helium will begin. Yes, the temperature will increase rapidly. This will further increase the helium fusion rate and reaction zone, but it won't increase the pressure. Therefore, the sun's core would not expand steadily. The thermal runaway reaction causes the star to release 1,000,000 times more energy than a normal star in a matter of seconds. Our sun will become a white dwarf, and Earth will be vaporized by this process into free matter. Helium flash. Nick's muttering was heard by the researcher, who nodded as if he had just been pardoned. It's helium flash. Are you kidding me? Agent Hill closed the curtains and walked into Nick's office. SHIELD can't do anything about this. Our imagination isn't crazy enough to come up with a plan to deal with a solar explosion. These words made both of them silent, as if they had a flash of inspiration. Nick was the first to react. He hesitated and said, "There isn't? Why do I think there is such a plan?" Hill looked at him thoughtfully. Suddenly, both of them shouted, "Howard Stark!" Chen Ong didn't seem to care about the humans on Earth who were being shot. Neither the solar storm nor the helium flash could threaten him. Lady Stormsword also knew this, so this move was more of a hostage and exchange. The safety of Earth in exchange for the survival of the mutants and their safe departure. However, this did not stop Chen Ong from completely erasing Dakin's consciousness. He locked Dakin's main personality in a split body, allowing the many personalities in his body to reside in the split body and obtain freedom. This was like another form of resurrection, because Dakin himself didn't know how many personalities he had. The ones who died in front of him, the ones he wanted to save and remember, the characters he had seen in movies and animation, how many characters there were in his memory and imagination. How many personalities there were. Of course, most of this was pale and one-sided. Walter? Quicksilver? Professor? Magneto? The mutants all saw their split bodies. They watched in horror as countless splits of different colors were born from Dakin's main body. Some had just died and some were still alive. Until Dakin became a biochemical material with a blank personality. I've studied this kind of simulation and replication ability before. Darwin's genetic simulation, Demonis cell transformation, and the Sentinel's self-evolution. Congratulations, this is enough for me to develop Dakin's ability to a whole new level. Chen Eng's words made the young mutant warriors nervous. They all looked at this mutant, the unprecedented demon king in human history, with their hearts extremely nervous and uneasy. Chen Ong did not disappoint them. He smiled and said, "Don't think that these personalities are fake. Dakin's personality simulation ability is the closest ability I've seen to a soul. Sometimes you can't even tell whether these personalities are his memories, or he has swallowed other people's souls into his own body. Of course, virtual is virtual, but I've made up for this point. I used the Demonis, Darwin, and the Sentinel robot's cell circumference as material and adjusted Dakin's body so that he can perfectly clone your body, so what?" Vulcan interrupted him and said, "We only have one soul. This is something you can't fake." "Young man, don't be so decisive." Chen Ong smiled and added, "Is the soul really unique? Perhaps the experience in this dimension has given you this illusion. Think about it, the future, the past, the present, there are countless of you in countless time and space. Is their soul unique? These are the souls I pulled from the depths of time. Some of them are from the past, some are your future, and some are just another possibility of your existence, the present. After killing you, they will be the only self, and they can successfully replace you and gain a new life. This time, your enemy is yourself, and something from my imagination." As Chen Eng's voice fell, the doppelganger Magneto looked at himself not far away and sneered, "There can only be one Magneto in this world." He looked back at his subordinates and enemies that kept appearing, pointed to his heart and said, "You should have felt the voice in your heart, the disgust from our souls. There is only one self in a world. If you don't want to become a false existence, then come with me and kill your existence in this world. Now, who will follow me? To be continued. P.S. Happy New Year's Eve, I wish everyone good luck." Chapter 227. Loki is the Prince of Asgard, and we must be careful with him. Captain America explained to Yang Chi helplessly that he was escorting Loki to the headquarters of S.H.I.E.L.D., and at the same time, he had to contact these mysterious fighters to determine their intentions. Asgard? Is it a country from another planet? Yang Chi carefully collected information about the world and was ready to make preliminary exchanges with the Earth government on behalf of the Republic of Republic. Captain America nodded and said, "Yes, they are from outer space. But what makes me more curious is your origin. If I'm not mistaken, your technology products have strong traces of human technology. It's hard to imagine that there are two such similar technological development paths, it's like human technology has developed to a crossroads and then made a new breakthrough in one of the directions. Yang Qi said what Rogers wanted to say. He looked at Captain America and said, "It's hard to imagine that there is such a similar technology tree in this world, right? Unless there is a race whose physiological structure, planetary environment, historical traceability, and logical thinking are so similar to humans, and in extreme accidental circumstances, their historical development happens to be similar to that of humans. Of course, it's not impossible, but we have a better explanation." Captain America thought for a long time and finally said the word, "parallel space." Yang Qi did not admit or deny it. Although the answer is very close, it is still some distance from the truth. Although he does not agree with the practice of humans in this world, Yang Qi still chooses to respect the law enforcement power of the sovereign country of the earth. After all, not every country can be as decisive as the Republic or Thunderous to solve the problem of contact with aliens. Judging from Loki's ability, Asgard is obviously a country with technology and strength that far surpasses that of the Earth. The U.S. government will choose this way. This is also reasonable. They are not like the Tri-Nation Alliance Army, which has leapfrogging black technology and military strength that can beat and even destroy the Chitauri army. Several people flew from Berlin to New York in a Quinjet. SHIELD has obviously adapted to the endless stream of aliens and superpowers during this time. Reformers, scientists who invented black technology, God, magicians in the short span of a few months, several battles that could destroy Earth had taken place, and the number of powerhouses that could destroy the world was endless. Even if their true form was the calamity, the bane of mankind, and the Creator were excluded. A certain God, as well as the group of angels under him, the number of powerhouses who had the thoughts and the ability to move the world were far more than 10. The Hulk sealed on the moon. The gods of Asgard. The destroyer tyrant that ruled an entire universe empire. A secluded inhuman clan. There was also the mysterious group that had recently appeared on Neptune. These existences that seriously threatened the safety of Earth forced SHIELD to search for the evolutionary equation on the monument of life and time, crack the manufacturing method of the Sentinel on the monument of death, and create the intelligent life Ultron. During this period, because of his research on the universe's Tesseract cube, he had attracted the attention of Thanos and other evil forces. But anyway, SHIELD was still on the move. Sometimes, he felt helpless and could only watch his own fate from the sidelines, drifting freely without anyone to rely on, maintaining the survival of the entire human race on a fragile balance and possibility, or on the idea of a dangerous existence. The surface temperature of the Sun has risen by 4 million degrees. Is the star core temperature measurement spectrometer of Stark Industries in place? This temperature is already very dangerous. SHIELD was in a panic, and everyone was running around, passing data and information. They were observing the star near Earth and the situation in the Blackbody region of Neptune. All the data showed that this young star was heading towards death, whether it collapsed into a white dwarf or expanded into a red giant. The Earth less than 9 light minutes away from it would melt, evaporate, and disappear completely. And all this was because a certain existence on Neptune wanted to trigger a helium flash and manipulate a cosmic storm to heat the Sun. The core temperature is 60 million degrees, and it is still rising at a power of hundreds of degrees per second. It is less than 5 days away from the danger line of 100 million to 120 million. Not good, the temperature is increasing rapidly. We don't have much time. What's the situation on Earth? Agent Hill asked. One of the researchers stood up and quickly replied, "The Earth's temperature is normal. The spectrum measured on the surface hasn't fluctuated much compared to 3 days ago. However, outside the atmosphere, the spectral temperature has exceeded 600 degrees, which is equivalent to a large-scale solar storm. All the light radiation carrying energy will inexplicably disappear after entering the atmosphere. It's like the Earth is protected by a cover." It was hard to say whether the person who triggered the cosmic storm on Neptune was more powerful or the person who silently controlled the entire Earth was more terrifying. Agent Hill then noticed that the psychological state of his scientific elites was abnormal. Their eyes were dull and they were in a trance. Obviously, they were affected by the astronomical data of Neptune and the Sun. It was also the first time that Agent Hill came into contact with this terrifying world. Hidden under the world of ordinary people, the cruelest secrets in the world of SHIELD, and the facts and truth that were mostly different from human cognition. "How's Neptune?" Nick Fury hurried out of the office. The first thing he was concerned about was the situation on Neptune. Reduce the detection level of the Sun's temperature and assign people to Neptune. That's the cause of all this. It looks like the situation is dire. Agent Hill pointed at the data on the screen and said, "There are a few large fluctuations in a few physical quantities. There was even an astronomical magnetic storm just now. Even the most conservative estimate is that Neptune's magnetic field must have been destroyed. Right now, the planet's gravity distribution is extremely uneven." "How many large fluctuations in physical quantities are there?" "The magnetic storm is one, and so is the light radiation. There is also the cosmic storm that swept through the entire solar system. There are too many abnormal energy fluctuations, such as temperature, mass, and gravitational force. There is more than one person there. Our Creator's opponent is not simple either." Nick was hesitating if he should risk losing a few satellites to adjust the detection orbit when someone interrupted him. "Director, Captain America wants to see you." "Let him come in." "Wait, is there someone else?" Nick suddenly realized. Chapter 228. When Yang Qi saw the familiar figure again from the screen around him, his heart almost stopped. Let me tell you, although he was wearing a mask, the suffocating sense of oppression, the chilling dominance, the arbitrary style of doing things, and the familiar technological traces of the Skynet base all reminded him of that terrible name. The name that had been repeating in his ears since he came to this world. "You know Dr. Doom?" Captain America was keenly aware of Yang Qi's stiffness and shock, and also thought of the possible secrets between them. Yang Qi locked onto the Skynet base in Manhattan through the satellite in outer space, and flipped through the photos and information of Chen Ong one by one, frowning. The more he flipped through the information, the more he was sure of his terrible guess. "He's called Dr. Doom here." Captain America was dumbfounded. "He has other names." "Oh right, he borrowed the name of a supercriminal, so he's not called Doom, then he's... I remember you mentioning his name." "He's the Apocalypse," Yang Qi replied in a heavy tone. "That's impossible. The Apocalypse is another very terrible evil existence." Nick, who hurried over, interrupted Yang Qi's words. "He's definitely not the Apocalypse. The real Apocalypse is still under the surveillance of the 5 universal gods." Thor, who was next to Nick, also added, "We've been at war with the Apocalypse for more than 1,000,000 years. The Apocalypse is the real god, and that person has no divinity." "We don't have as long a history of war as you, but we were expelled from our homeland just a few months ago," Barshak interjected. "We'll remember who the Apocalypse is for the rest of our lives." Just then, there was a slight change in the surveillance video in outer space. "This is a gravitational wave." Nick stared at the screen, his tone unconsciously rising. "The Earth's orbit was affected just now. According to calculations, there's a problem with Neptune's gravitational force. What does the monitoring data of the gravitational wave represent?" The researcher next to him hurriedly explained, "This is what the simulation of such data should look like." He tapped lightly on the keyboard. On the screen, the orange elliptical sphere representing Neptune was split in half from the center of the sphere. The entire planet was divided into two debris of different sizes. The smaller star remnant was captured by the Sun's gravity and flew toward the inner part of the solar system at an extremely fast speed. The diameter of Neptune is nearly 50,000 kilometers. The fighting there has become so intense. Change to Stark Industries' deep space exploration satellite. "I want to see what's going on," Nick ordered. Soon, an optical image of Neptune appeared on the screen. However, due to the speed of light delay, the entire optical image should have taken place 250 minutes ago in absolute time. A huge gap had appeared on Neptune, and it had lost almost a third of its original mass. This frozen planet had now turned into a fiery hell, and superhot liquid erupted from the core, covering the entire planet. The world that the Asgardians called Jordaheim. It had already disappeared from its original orbit and was now located 500,000 kilometers away from its original position. The gap on the side of the planet looked like an incomplete fist print no matter how one looked at it. The original material at the gap turned into a comet with a long tail. Unfortunately, it was flying towards the Earth. Nick had a feeling that there were more lice than lice. Anyway, there were still 4 years before the Earth, and the Sun was going to explode in a few hours. There was less than a year before the end of the apocalypse, and there were less than 9 hours before Loki led the aliens to attack. So he could wait for the helium flash of the Sun to destroy the alien army and the entire human race. Then let the apocalypse and Neptune's comet return without accomplishing anything. Nick shrugged at Captain America and said helplessly, "That Asgardian should be allowed to see how dangerous the Earth he wants to conquer is. If he were to stay in my position for a minute, he would feel that he is better suited to suckling at home." Captain America sighed and said, "I thought I could enjoy peace this time, but now it seems that World War II was a little safer. Can this image be clearer?" He pointed to a few black spots on the larger wreckage. On the wreckage of Neptune, at the location of the larger black spots, several star fragments became asteroids around Neptune, and under the control of Magneto, they searched the entire planet. "We have lost track of him. His speed is too fast, and the surrounding energy reflection is too strong. It has blocked the background electromagnetic radiation of the universe. It makes it impossible for me to lock onto him." Magneto floated outside Neptune's orbit, scanning the surrounding electromagnetic wave. He hoped to find some clues about Chernong. Although the professor has helped us control a large group, the apocalypse has caused serious mental damage to him. Such a crude suppression of his other personalities will have an extreme negative impact on his injury. The seeds planted by apocalypse are germinating, and those personalities will devour each other, kill each other, and learn from each other, which will only produce more terrible things. This may be what Apocalypse wants. We are cultivating a group of demons. Storm's word questioned. "Increase the energy of the solar storm, we will force him out." Magneto looked at Earth, his eyes full of killing intent. "Impossible, the professor will not agree." "Then ignore him. Don't forget, the people on Earth are just a group of monkeys. This is an insult to humanity from Apocalypse." Magneto looked back at her angrily and asked, "If you think they are humans like Charles, you will not come here with me." Restoring human identity and allowing mutants and humans to truly merge as one, this is the common ideal of the Dark Templars. Storm's word was silent. She did not agree with the professor's choice to accept the identity of Starling, so she chose Magneto, who is committed to returning to humanity. But in her heart, the professor will always have more authority than Magneto. "I can't do it. Once I intensify the reaction process of the helium flash, the professor will force his way into my brain and control me. You know, the only thing in this world that can restrict the professor's psychic abilities, other than Apocalypse, is his own moral code. You have changed, Aurora. The voice that suddenly appeared in her mind shocked Storm's word, but when she reacted, she only felt sad. Storm's word said absent-mindedly, "Professor." She looked around at the deep darkness and the twinkling stars around her. The identity of humans does not lie in genes and bloodlines, nor in the past and the present, but in love, emotion, and the future. Apocalypse did not create humans, because the real creators of humans are always themselves. He can reproduce history, tamper with people's minds, and create human bodies, but the real thing that gives human souls and life is something that cannot be changed: love. Where there is love, there is life. Look at the people who really exist on Earth. Their joys and sorrows, their joys and sorrows, their love and life. This kind of touching and reality will not change because of the hypocrisy of their ancestors. They are also human beings, and we have become star spirits. But they stole our history, leaving our souls without anything to rely on. Storm's word could not help but sob. Sigh, Aurora, help me control the group. The professor did not dwell on this point, but pleaded with her. The apocalypse has injected too many memories and emotions into him. The filthy, evil, terrifying, cruel, violent, and powerful things from human fantasy works and history have been injected into the brains of the large group by the apocalypse in the form of perfect memories and emotions. Those distorted personalities have killed and devoured each other in his mind to give birth to the concentrated existence of all their evil. The Texas Killer, Jack the Ripper, Miyazaki Tsutomu, these murderers with serious mental illness, and the demons from human fantasy. Jason, Freddy, Sadako, Kayako, Chu Renmei, Esther. Chapter 229. Hulk didn't know how long he had been in this darkness, and even his memory and personality were blurred. In the beginning, he could still maintain the unextinguished anger in his heart, giving himself infinite strength. But in this empty darkness, there was no reliance on strength, and time was meaningless. In the beginning, he became angrier day by day. The anger of being imprisoned made him dozens of times stronger, but no matter how strong his will was, he couldn't resist the erosion of time. This long darkness had polished the anger in his heart to the point where it was about to be extinguished. Chun-Ong's seal was an independent space, without matter, energy, or even time. It only relied on the 6 golden characters on the asteroid to maintain the connection with the outside space. Even so, Hulk's experience was a very long process, so long that even the barrier between his two personalities had been worn down. I thought everything here was eternal and unchanging. Hulk looked at a beam of soft light in the dark space in surprise. His eyes were calm and quiet at this time, as if he had recovered the kindness and rationality of Bruce. The soft light was not dazzling, but it was quite conspicuous in this unchanging darkness. Hulk could see a vague shadow wrapped in this light. It was not strong, but it was very warm. The shadow became clear. It was a gentle and wise old man, sitting in a wheelchair and looking at him with a smile. It was worth noting that there was no trace of hair on the old man's head. The bald old man had the scholar's aura that Bruce was familiar with. He was calm and wise, and his eyes seemed to see through the world. They were penetrating, clear, pure, peaceful, quiet, and joyful. His calmness and sincerity could be seen in his eyes. This was the window of the soul, and he opened his clear heart to Hulk to see. Such a person. Even Hulk found it difficult to have malice and anger towards him. His calmness even infected the anger under Hulk's calm appearance. Of course, this place is not eternal, child. Apocalypse just distorted the space here and stretched time to a very long limit. He hoped to use the world to erase the anger in your heart. No emotions. Without anger, Hulk will disappear, and in such an empty place, Bruce can't live. But he failed. Hulk smiled and said, I want to thank him because I found that I can control my anger now. I won't lose my mind again. My power is truly in my own hands. Bruce, Hulk, has become one person. The bald old man laughed kindly. Hulk felt inexplicably guilty under his all-seeing gaze. The old man said sincerely, "Don't lie to me, child. I'm not a subordinate of Apocalypse, and I'm not here to test you. I mean you no harm. On the contrary, I'm here to help you. I'll do everything I can to help you." Hulk had no reason to believe him. But he still looked into the old man's eyes and said, "You don't believe that I'm Hulk?" "No, I believe you are Hulk." The old man answered with absolute certainty, but his tone immediately changed. He pursed his lips and said, "I just don't believe that you've calmed down. On the contrary, you are in a state of extreme anger. Your calmness and rationality are all preserved for the sake of survival in this space. You have buried a kindling in your heart, my child, and if you set it free, you will die. If it's released, you'll turn the entire universe into a sea of fire and ruins." Hulk's calmness disappeared bit by bit with the old man's words. The smile on his face became more and more distorted and cold. These ordinary words seemed to have magical power. They cut into the depths of his heart and stabbed everything that he had hidden deeply. The Hulk's body swelled up again. From a height of 3 meters in front of the old man, he expanded several times. The old man was like an ant in front of him. His face became more and more ferocious, and his anger rose higher and higher, until the Hulk filled this boundless and vast space. He waved his hand and tore the space apart, violently destroying everything in front of him. There was no matter, no energy. He could shatter the void with a punch, and he could tear the space that imprisoned him apart with open arms. The roar that caused the entire void to tremble stirred up a huge wave of space matter. The Hulk roared, "I've been imprisoned for hundreds of millions of years, exiled to this barren space by Dr. Destruction. How dare you provoke me? You're courting death. It's the apocalypse that imprisons your body, but it's you who imprisons your heart." The old man's shadow was like a tenacious lamp in the space storm. It never dissipated. Instead, it lit up the Hulk's lonely heart, and the warm light shone on him. However, the Hulk's anger could not be quelled until the 6 Chinese characters on the asteroid that sealed him lit up slightly. "No, no, Dr. Destruction, I curse you. Damn it all!" The Hulk cried bitterly and grabbed his head. A circle of light that seemed to be made of gold was slowly hovering above him. The old man gently stroked the circle of light on Hulk's head. The golden light dimmed slightly and then disappeared. This is the thought controller. It locks your meme. As long as your anger exceeds a limit, it will forcibly change your personality. For the apocalypse, there is nothing that cannot be analyzed about the human soul and personality. He wantonly plays with the soul, changes consciousness, and sets up this kind of brainwashing program. He has always used you as a test subject to study the deep connection between memes and genes. I thought I had it under control, but I didn't expect it to be hidden in my heart and never leave. Hulk slowly raised his head, looking confused. "Bruce?" the old man said in surprise. "If I leave here, the anger of being imprisoned will make Hulk extremely powerful. It will destroy everything." Bruce looked at the old man and pleaded, "Please help me destroy it. Hulk is a part of you, then destroy me too," Bruce said firmly. The old man shook his head. "No, Bruce. I have a student like you. She has an incomparably dark shadow, an uncontrollable personality. I once tried to suppress it, but I failed in the end. But I never regretted protecting her. Her name is Jean Grey, and she is my student. Her other personality is the Black Phoenix, an existence destined to destroy everything. I am Professor X, I can help you. Are you willing to be my student?" "I am willing, Professor." Professor X delved into Bruce's mind layer by layer. In the deepest part, he smiled at his new student. Bruce curled up in this dark spiritual world. Next to him was twisted anger and the desire to destroy. Hulk's consciousness was like the sea, surrounding him. Dark and violent, he could only curl up and seek some pitiful space. Until he saw the professor's light, saw the light tear through the darkness, split the sea, and rescued him. The professor's shadow took a golden hoop from Bruce's head, and the circle of light on Hulk's body suddenly disappeared. Professor! Bruce burst into tears. Bruce, you have to learn to control your mind. The professor put his hand on his heart and said to him, You are Hulk, Hulk is you. Bruce roared at the sky. Hulk's body, sealed in space, also raised his head, and his roar tore through the space again. The apocalypse set up a two-way space wall outside this space, and he broke this space down into a part of the structure of the outside universe. Four-dimensional time is composed of three-dimensional space, but in the four-dimensional universe, it is impossible to find three-dimensional space without time. This is the space wall. He isolated the connection between this three-dimensional space and the higher dimension, and also made it impossible for the higher dimension to enter here. But in order to torture you with time, the apocalypse set up a circular paradox to connect with the outside world in time and space. This left a loophole. As long as I destroy this space-time paradox, I can destroy the space wall and restore the connection between the two spaces. Bruce asked curiously, Then how do you destroy the space-time paradox? Do you see those 6 characters? Bruce looked at the asteroid in outer space, puzzled. Those are Chinese characters. Just say, Mani Mani Padme Hum, and it will be done. As soon as the professor's voice fell, a thin piece of gold foil fell from the top of the 5 mountains on the asteroid parallel to the moon. Bruce immediately felt that he had restored his connection with the outside world, and he could even see Earth. That's it? Bruce's tone was a little strange. The professor nodded, confirming Bruce's doubts. This is a means left behind by the apocalypse. As long as anyone says these 6 characters on this planet, the seal will be unlocked. Not only did Bruce not show any excitement, but he said fiercely, He's crazy. Although he was a little dazed by this, Bruce still forced himself to calm down and said to Professor X, Professor, go a little further away. The damage I'll cause when I come out will be a little big. My body is still tens of thousands of light-years away, protecting the civilization from afar with the main body of the apocalypse. Here, it's just the radiation of my thoughts. You just have to be careful not to hurt Earth. Okay, Professor, I'm coming out. The next moment, SHIELD and other country bumpkins on Earth once again saw an astronomical miracle happening at close range. A big green hand stretched out from the asteroid that was 1/3 the size of the moon. Then, like a chicken hatching from an egg, a giant split the planet and jumped out of the core. A loud noise came from outside the atmosphere. Although there was no air, the vibration caused by other media still made the whole world resound with a loud thunder. Hulk! The giant beat his chest and stamped his feet as he roared. The huge asteroid wreckage was lifted up by him with one hand and thrown towards the sun. A solar storm of tens of thousands of degrees enveloped him, but Bruce did not seem to notice. Chapter 230. Ever since Skynet took over Manhattan, Earth had been in constant trouble. Disasters of all sizes were happening one after another. Even the pedestrians on the streets seemed to be in a hurry, their expressions gloomy. Although they did not express it in words, an inexplicable restlessness was always growing in the dark corners. Everyone had a restlessness in their hearts that had nowhere to vent. The Hulk once again tore the planet apart with his bare hands in front of the world. After media reports, everyone knew that he was a monster who could not control his anger. He was the culprit who caused havoc in New York City. The victims who lost their loved ones in that accident would never forget the pain that Hulk brought to them. Hello, this is the White House's line. I'm sorry, Dr. Bruce did not commit a crime, and he is not wanted. We can't arrest him and send him to a mental hospital. Even according to the law, the doctor was incapacitated when he killed your son, so the court can't convict him. We understand how you feel, but Dr. Bruce is a hero who protects the people. Nick put down the phone in his hand and shrugged at Gil. I'm going to give the operator psychological counseling. Oh my God! Her words are so unpleasant. Has Bruce contacted us yet? Gil asked worriedly. The situation is not good. We have tried our best to control the media, but we can't stop the gossip about Killer Hulk and Ogre Bruce. Hulk tore the planet apart and escaped under everyone's eyes. We can't control the worried people at all. They don't know that the sun is about to explode. If this continues, I'm worried that the people will make irrational choices, Gil said worriedly. There's still time. The protests and legislation can't explode in a short period of time. The most important thing now is the survival of mankind. For this bottom line, we can pay any price. The Congress will support any action we take, as long as we can solve the crisis that is close at hand. Send a team led by Black Widow to look for Bruce. Nick stood up and looked at the helicarrier outside the office window. He said thoughtfully, I have a feeling that he will bring us the good news that we have been waiting for. Chief, there's a riot in Stark Square against a superhero, said Hill after receiving a message. He turned around and said to Nick. Chen-Ong was in Stark Square, still holding Thor's hammer in his left hand. Although he did not wear Dr. Destruction's mask, his attire was still conspicuous enough. Skynet controls the city's surveillance facilities and networks, making it impossible for SHIELD to find him as quickly as possible. The sudden appearance of Chen-Ong caused uneasiness in the crowd, and there was a little commotion in the flowing crowd under the Stark building. The heroes who gathered here to protest against Stark Industries formed a circle around Chen-Ong. They were hostile to Chen-Ong's silence, and fear surrounded him. Then, an old man who looked like the leader of the gathering stepped forward. He glared at Chen-Ong aggressively and walked toward Chen-Ong without any trace of politeness. You monsters, demons abandoned by God, get out of our country! The United States does not need the protection of devils like you. As he spoke, he tried to push Chen-Ang's chest. However, an invisible force field stopped him. The man gave it another push in surprise. He felt the supple but strong repulsive force in front of him. It was like rubber sliding away from his strength. Monster, the man yelled. He carefully took 2 steps back. He pointed at Chen-Ong with hatred and fear and shouted, This is the power of the devil, these bastards and deformities, they gave up the power of God's grace. Get out, monster! The crowd on the periphery was boiling. They picked up the things in their hands and threw them at Chen-Ong. You monsters, self-righteous heroes and vigilantes, we don't need your protection. The law and the police will protect us from living with monsters. You should be locked in prison, deformed bastards! Baby-eating devils! Seeing that Chen-Ong had no intention of resisting, the marchers became more and more courageous. They boldly threw weapons and filth at him, and the insults from their mouths became more and more filthy. Molotov cocktails started to be thrown at Chen-Ong, and the gasoline started to burn around Chen-Ong. The crowd with steel pipes and weapons threw gasoline cans and solid alcohol at Chen-Ong from afar. Nothing could get within 6 feet of Chen-Ong, like there was an invisible barrier between Chen-Ong and them. The flames burned outside the barrier, forming a circle, like a blooming lianhua. In the middle of the burning lianhua, Chen-Ong calmly observed the fanatical crowd, and the people outside looked at him like they were looking at a monster. The people outside looked at him like they were looking at a monster, and Chen-Ong looked at the people outside like they were ants. Chen-Ang's calmness was interpreted by the attackers as guilt and guilt, just like what these people had done before. Superheroes would not attack normal people because normal people were the representatives of justice. Once a superhero attacked them, it would be the greatest sin, and they would change from being on the side of justice to being a criminal. The law would protect them. They denied the justice of a superhero, but they used the integrity of a hero to demand a superhero. Once someone resisted, they could take the moral high ground and ruin the person's reputation. Because they represented normal people, the largest group of humans, and because the law did not punish the masses, it would only protect the weak, and because the superheroes who valued their reputation as much as their lives did not dare to do anything to them. But Chen Ong was not a superhero, he was the world's biggest villain. He was infamous in several planes, an existence that made children cry. I don't think I did anything to you, did I? Chen Ong waved his hand to disperse the flames and said to the people surrounding him, I'm actually not a superhero, can you not surround me, I have something to do. The man in the lead stood up again, holding a steel pipe wrapped in tape in his hand, which was different from a rubber baton. Not only would the tape not act as a buffer, but it would also slow down the impact, which could really break a person's skull. Because you are a monster, God created humans, He was merciful and did not give us the power to hurt others. He pointed at the invisible force field around Chen Ong and said loudly to the people around him, only demons and monsters have this kind of power. You try to hide behind a harmless appearance, but God taught us not to lock hungry beasts in the same house with us. We have made this mistake many times, but monsters will always hurt our loved ones. Put those monsters in cages. Only in mental hospitals and prisons will you not hurt us. Don't push everything to God, I didn't think of such nonsense when I created you. Chen Ong casually waved his hand, and the man was pulled to his side by an irresistible force. Chen Ong smiled and asked him, I have a question for you. Chen Eng's sudden action shocked the people around him, and they began to scatter in panic. The man in Chen Eng's grasp struggled even more violently, and he threatened, How dare you attack me? The police and the government will not let you go. If you kill me, the honor and justice of a superhero will be trampled by you, and the Avengers will immediately arrest you and throw you into prison. They can't control me. Chen Ong shook his head. My question is, if all the superheroes are expelled by you, who will stop me? The eyes of the man caught by Chen Ong suddenly widened, and his face suddenly turned pale. His whole body trembled, and he was so afraid that he could not speak, because Chen Eng's face was covered with a metal mask that he was very familiar with. Water drops dripped from his crotch, and the man who was caught in a nightmare could not even control his bladder, and his body was completely paralyzed in the air. The persistence of the hero and the doubts of the people, an interesting plot, including the hero's self-interrogation and the struggle of human nature, the conflict between personal heroism and the system, is really the most precious training for the hero, but unfortunately I am the villain. Chen Ong threw the smelly body to the ground, and Mjolnir fell on Stark Square, and all of New York shook violently. A huge crack ran through the entire Stark Square from where Mjolnir fell, tearing the surrounding streets and destroying the foundations of the surrounding buildings. The whole city once again fell into panic and turmoil. Under the satellite surveillance of SHIELD, Chen Ong walked into the Stark building behind him. To be continued. Chapter 231. This is Stark Industries. Sir, you can't go in. The hot receptionist hurriedly stood up and tried to stop Chen Ong, who was about to enter from the side. Her waist swayed, her curves were perfect, and Tawny's aesthetic sense was once again revealed. It's not hard to imagine what kind of luck that playboy will enjoy when he goes to work. I can do it. Chen Ong said hello to her and stepped into the elevator. Skynet has controlled the security system here, and his authority is the same as Stark's. The green light representing passage was quickly relit. This made the receptionist a little hesitant. Chen Eng's authority was higher than hers, but she had never seen this person. The network defense of Stark Industries is one of the best on the Earth. Artificial intelligence Jarvis controls part of the administrative power in the group and has the highest security authority. In theory, she doesn't have the right to manage so much. After thinking for a while, seeing the elevator carrying Chen Ong disappear from sight, the beautiful receptionist pressed the security button next to her and said to the intercom on the stage, Security Department, check the security authority of the person who just went in. What? No one in the surveillance? I'm sure someone went in, go inform Ms. Pep. The Stark Security Department hurriedly contacted the Chief Control Artificial Intelligence Jarvis, but the defense of the building has been taken over by Skynet. Of course, they can't receive a reply. At this time, even the slowest person understands that the headquarters of Stark Industries has been invaded. Skynet's nanorobots look like sticky silver liquid. They flow into the Stark building along the city's water system. The employees of Stark Industries can see that wherever there is a water pipe, a silver liquid begins to seep out. The metal and electronic products infected by the liquid, their internal circuits and parts melt rapidly, deform, reshape, and finally completely change into another form. Silently, the entire building is covered with this liquid robot. Although the appearance has not changed, its internal structure and components are undergoing earth-shaking changes. The employees of Stark Industries looked around in panic, filled with an inflated silver gel, and even with machinery and powerful firearms, they couldn't tear it apart. There's a riot in Stark Square, and the Stark building next to it has also been invaded. We've got a lock on someone in the satellite. Director, you have to take a look. Agent Hill hurriedly handed over the projector screen. Nick did not know how long it had been since he last saw Agent Hill in such a panic. Even the countdown to the sun's explosion did not make her this panicked. When he received the projection, he was still in the mood to be curious, but when he saw the back view of Chen-Ong stepping into the Stark building, his heart skipped a beat. He silently repeated the word F***CK 6 or 7 times in his heart. If only Bruce was here. Nick sighed. He's the best scholar in the country who studies gamma-ray detection, as well as the strongest warrior. Although Stark is also excellent, he's more focused on building weapons. Now we need both the Tesseract and the damn Loki's conspiracy. We need to solve the solar crisis, and we also need to figure out why that person appeared in the Stark building. I don't even know what's most important. Is it the solar crisis? Or is it Dr. Doom who made it? There should be a clue that links all of this together. Eltech analyzed. It's impossible that there's no connection between all of this. Nick muttered to himself, clue. Yes, clue. The clue of the battle that happened on Neptune is Dr. Doom and his enemies. They caused the solar crisis, but Dr. Doom returned to Earth from Neptune and went to the Stark building. This is a complete clue. Then there's Loki. He stole the Tesseract and attracted the Asgardians and human warriors from the parallel world. We all know that he has a conspiracy. Thor told us that the Tesseract is a door that opens the barrier between us and the parallel universe. Then there's Bruce's escape, and we don't know who helped him. There are 2 key figures in all of this, Dr. Doom and Loki. They are the core of 2 crises. The other 2 are the Tesseract and Dr. Doom's enemies. We still need a key to help us connect the 4 core clues and connect the 2 lines. Only then can we understand the cause and effect. Maybe we've found the key. Agent Hill looked up in shock. She pointed to the projector and said, Thor has found the location of the Tesseract. It's in the Stark building. At this time, Chen-Ong had arrived at the top floor of the Stark building. Dr. Eric, who was controlled by Loki, was debugging the portal of the Tesseract. Hawkeye was protecting him. Out of the instinct of an agent, he did not appear in conspicuous places. Instead, he hid in a relatively remote sniping point and monitored the entire top floor of the building day and night. From his perspective, he could see most of the road. If someone tried to take advantage of the few blind spots, they would be blown to pieces by a hidden landmine. He noticed the elevator the moment it appeared. The alloy bow was aimed at the elevator door. As long as there was a gap the width of a palm, Hawkeye could clearly see who was inside and decide whether to send the mechanical arrow into the person's brain in the next second. But the way Chen-Ong opened the door was more special. The silver metal wires weaved into a flat and soft blanket under his feet and quickly spread in the air. It quickly covered the space on the top floor of the building in front of Hawkeye. The alloy bow in Hawkeye's hand was accidentally touched by this silver flocculent material. It quickly melted into a bundle of metal wires and tied his hand. The alloy arrow on his back also silently melted, sticking close to his body, using sharp metal wires to bind his joints and muscles. Even the slightest movement would leave behind bloody marks. This was not the first time Hawkeye faced Chen-Ong, but it was the first time he faced Chen-Ong alone. Dr. Eric had no power to resist. He just waved his weapon symbolically and was controlled by Skynet. Then, Chen-Ong dispelled the blue in his pupils. The doctor was stunned for a moment. "What happened to me?" "You're controlled by Loki." Chen-Ong walked in front of the Tesseract and looked at the blue cube inside the energy shield. He didn't even turn his head as he spoke. "Oh my God! The space door has been activated." Before Dr. Eric had time to say anything else, he rushed to the Tesseract. "The door is about to open. I can't close the door by myself. I need to contact S.H.I.E.L.D." Chapter 232. Chen-Ong stood on the high platform of the Stark building, looking down at New York City under the night sky. This high platform faced the east, and a long eave protruded from the inside to the outside. On both sides of the corridor, there were mechanical hands that dismantled the metal armor. Every day, Iron Man would remove his armor here. Chen-Ong moved a chair and sat here. He could see most of New York City. Shaking the wine that he took out from the bar next to him, Chen-Ong looked a little more human. From the beginning of taking NZT-48 until now, the word emotion was a little distant from him. Along the way, he took drugs, transformed, practiced, and learned. He was getting closer and closer to the truth, but he was getting further and further away from human nature. When he first obtained his ability, Chen-Ong still wanted to enjoy luxury and indulge in the illusion of money and money. But when he really sat here with Stark's collection of wine, he could feel that it was even more boring. This was not a process of alienation and loss, but more like a kind of growth, just like a child growing up and losing interest in candy and toys. What used to be vigilant and fearful seemed to be nothing more than a smile of innocence and ignorance today. Sitting here, he could deeply feel the future, the present, and the past. They were closely connected through a kind of pivot, and he could feel the ordinary and somewhat stupid version of himself in the past. The ordinary is me, and the ordinary is also me. The one with flesh and blood and feelings in the past is me, and the one who is not stagnant in everything now is also me. It was like an earthworm that had passed through countless planes and countless times. In a plane of life, only the smallest ring of the earthworm could be seen, and it would be considered a complete existence. But every part of the earthworm's body was it, and it was a real and complete part of its existence. The doubts and feelings that existed in the past were real, and they were a part of Chen-Ong. Now, this completely unfamiliar Chen-Ong was also real, and it was also a part of this existence. Just like the earthworm's body sliding across a plane, the earliest ring disappeared, and it was replaced by another ring, but the earthworm did not change. It was close to the time when the space gate would open. The gamma-ray fluctuations in the void are becoming more and more obvious, and Chen-Ong has seen S.H.I.E.L.D.'s helicarrier through Skynet. 3 huge battleships in the shape of an aircraft carrier are suspended over New York City. This time, the mothership was not as simple as it was in the movies. The firepower around it was strong enough. The surveillance system was even more thorough. The 4 huge anti-gravity engines gave it excellent power, and the well-designed aerodynamic shape also had an excellent stealth ability. With these 3 motherships, the UA Air Force could fight against the coalition forces of all the other countries on Earth. Unfortunately, if the opponent was someone from outside Earth. You want to see? Even the other forces on Earth believed that this was purely the wishful thinking of Earth's technology tree. Weapons were built on the basis of intelligence. In the face of other technology trees, or even technological factors, this thing was a large target. It would not consider the mage's arbitrary door, teleportation, Asgard's rainbow gate, the Communist Alliance's short-distance space wave, or the God's particle ineffectiveness field. High-energy gravitational wave, space vibration bullet. There were also 3 giants with psychic abilities: the Professor's psionic storm, Yuri's mind control, and Thanos' mind gem. The mutants had endless abilities, and there were 100 ways to make it impossible to survive. In the core area of the spacetime carrier, Loki sat in a transparent cage. Father received an inquiry from SHIELD, which was 100 times more humiliating to him than Ron digging out his eyes. Thor looked at his brother angrily. I never thought that this day would come. I would see you in a mortal prison. Then you will give the mortals an answer for the murder of hundreds of mortals. Asgard's face has been lost by you alone. A god sentenced for murder. You have made us a big joke in the 9 realms. You are still so stupid, Thor. Loki smiled indifferently. Your punishment has not been completed. Odin needs you. Even if you're still that idiot with a brain full of muscles, doesn't he have time to train you? Loki. Thor's iron fist slammed heavily on the transparent wall between the two. Idiot. You are still putting on airs in front of them. Even Odin knows that we are no longer gods. Loki sneered. They are 100 times smarter than you. They can imprison me in this cage. They destroyed our old enemies and sent the frost giants to hell. They are colder than the frost giants, crueler than the dark elves, and crazier than the dwarves. You actually call them mortals. So you are going to conquer them alone? Thor sneered. Since you are so afraid of them, why are you still so bold? Loki said in a chanting tone, because I have an army. A powerful army that you can never imagine, and the support of an amazing existence. No matter how cruel humans are, they are only objects of my conquest. And you, Thor, are just a frog at the bottom of a well in Asgard. You can be a country lord, but I will be the conqueror of the earth and even this star field. Where is your army? Captain America came out from behind Thor and stared at Loki. Little bug hiding in the corner, have you finally come out? Loki laughed. I know what you want to ask, but it's too late for you. The Rubik's Cube has been opened. You hid the Rubik's Cube in the Stark building? You used it to open the door to other planets, didn't you? Captain America was not fooled by Loki's appearance and still focused on the core of the problem. Humans. Cruel, crazy, evil, greedy existences, you can always surprise me, but your good luck ends here. You can never imagine what kind of enemy you will face next. Surrender is the kindest choice I can give you. You think everything is under your control? Captain America shook his head and said, to be honest, SHIELD doesn't care what you are going to do. Alien army? Rubik's Cube? We care about it when we are in a good mood, but now we don't care about it at all. He looked into Loki's eyes, and his oppressive eyes made Loki uncomfortable. I came here to ask you, do you know someone? It's time. Chen-Ong looked at the clock on the wall and said to the professor, it's hard to stop me from doing anything in your current state. Are you here to watch the show? Even if I go all out, can I change anything? The professor said, I'm here to see the people you've really chosen. I want to see what kind of magic does the spark of civilization that you want to cultivate have, and is it worth it for you to change the world into what it is now? Chapter 233. Near dawn, S.H.I.E.L.D.'s helicarrier was approaching the Stark building. Chen-Ong opened the elevator of the building and drove everyone out. He stood on the platform of the Iron Man armor and watched the sun rise in the distance. The professor focused most of his thoughts on the body that Chen-Ong had prepared for him. Chen-Ong looked at the huge artificial object above his head that reflected the first ray of sunlight and said to him, we, the people behind the scenes, should get out of the way. Leave the stage to the young people. The professor shook his head and sighed. Are you ready to start? All the contradictions have accumulated to an inevitable level. When Loki opens the door, it will be the first shot. The seeds of 2 worlds have been planted, and it's time to harvest the fruit. At the same moment, on the helicarrier, under the heavy surveillance of Captain America, Nick, Hill, and others, Loki disappeared from the prison where he was imprisoned. He can't have gone far. We injected a liquid robot into his body, and the location shows that he hasn't gone far. Nick said angrily. What? You injected this thing into my brother's body? Thor grabbed Nick and asked. Nick glanced at him coldly. He is a wanted criminal by S.H.I.E.L.D. We have the right to do anything to him. If you stop me again, I'll take care of you too. Nick tightened Thor's collar and said coldly, Don't talk to me about Asgard. If you talk to me like that, I'll answer, Asgard, the United States of America has slaughtered more races than your entire population. With that, he stared at Thor with his only eye and sneered, Listen to me? Alien monkey? Director, you can't say that. Hill hurriedly came up to dissuade him. Of course I can. Nick smiled grimly. It's not racist for a black man to say that. Loki, who had taken his scepter, slowly walked into the Stark building. No one stopped him along the way, and he smoothly entered the heavily guarded elevator. Along the way, he can see the traces of Stark Industries employees leaving in a hurry. Loki has some doubts in his heart, but there are so many unexpected things on the Earth that this is nothing. As long as the Chitauri army was fine, he was not afraid of anything. This kind of confidence was not only for himself, but also for him to dominate countless galaxies. The confidence of the Thanatos who had conquered countless races was the confidence of the Thanatos' subordinates, the confidence of the Thanatos' ruthless, bloody, and terrifying rule, and the confidence of the Chitauri who had passed by. Earth was mysterious and eccentric. All of these strange things, the feeling of being powerless and the manipulator behind the scenes would vanish in the face of such a terrifying conquest. These messy things that grew in this crappy corner of the Earth would vanish into thin air. All of them would be annihilated in the face of Rocky's grandiose suppression. Damned Earth bumpkins, damned S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Avengers, and those damned messy things. What is Skynet? Doomsday? Apocalypse? Four Horsemen? Ancient civilization? Whatever strange things you are, you can all die for me. Just a small Earth, a worm-like thing in the universe. I will use my boots to crush them like a bug. Loki's mood was gloomy, and the cosmic magic cube and the teleportation device wrapped in the blue energy shield were a little happy. He has never suffered such a big loss, and it was in the hands of a group of Earth humans that he looked down upon. Loki tidied up his appearance and showed the calm smile of having everything under control again. Tawny! Bruce flashed out of a dark corner and called out to Iron Man, who flew down from the helicarrier. Dr. Bruce? Tawny looked carefully on both sides, and when he saw that no one was around, he whispered to Bruce, Congratulations on coming to the world. When did you come? Why didn't you look for me? S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't like me. For them, it may be a better ending for me to be locked in that meteorite. I'm tired of being guarded against and suspected. Now I can control myself. I just want to live an ordinary life. Bruce said calmly, The professor rescued me, and he told me something, and I think it's necessary to let you know. Iron Man wisely kept silent at the beginning of Bruce's words, but at the end, Tony asked in surprise, What is it? The cause of all problems. The push and the answer are related to a name, which we are not unfamiliar with in S.H.I.E.L.D.'s confidential files, Apocalypse. Never forget Apocalypse. Bruce took one last deep look at Tawny and turned to leave. Wait. Tawny stopped him. You don't want to leave like this, do you? I'm going to pursue the life I want. Tawny, you will bless me, right? Bruce laughed. Of course. Tawny immediately shook his head and said, No, no, no. You can't just leave, the world needs you. The sun above our heads is about to explode, and Loki has opened the door to alien invasion. Bruce, we need you, this is the last time, for world peace. Tawny made a gesture. Can you? Bruce looked embarrassed. Just as Tawny felt disappointed, he laughed and patted Tawny on the shoulder and said, I'll help you this time, the last time. When it's over, I'll find a place to live in seclusion. The next moment, a beam of light rose from not far away. It's the Stark building. Iron Man flew into the air. Loki is moving, I'll go see. Roar. Bruce tore his clothes and turned into a huge hulk. He climbed the nearby tall buildings and ran towards the beam of light. He did not lose his mind. Under the control of Bruce's personality, Hulk was more than 10 times smarter. He easily walked through the urban jungle and approached the target agilely. His speed was not slower than Stark. Standing at the top of the building, Loki looked down at the Avengers who followed him and controlled the portal behind him to open the final program. The Tesseract cube shook slightly, and the energy that had been accumulated for a long time smoothed out the distorted space of this universe. Through the 4-prism device, a set of special coordinates hidden in the Tesseract cube was opened. The portal shook slightly, and a huge amount of energy disappeared instantly. Strange? Why is the load of the portal close to collapse? It shouldn't be so difficult to connect to planet Chitauri, right? Could it be that those idiots broke the equipment on the other side again? Loki was puzzled. Loki! Tawny floated in front of Loki and looked at him coldly. To be continued. Chapter 234. The Chitauri's counterattack was not slow. 3 hours after the Alliance took over planet Chitauri, there were already troops stationed in the nearby star sector launching a tentative attack. The Republic was destructively extracting the core materials of the planet. Scarlet magma was being extracted from the veins of the planet's mantle like fresh blood, decomposing into energy and heavy nuclear materials in the nuclear furnace. Large amounts of metals were purified, cooled, and processed into large amounts of basic materials, which were then rapidly converted into war reserves. The development of autonomous machines gave the Alliance's industrial capability the foundation to increase exponentially. The only thing that limited their industrial capabilities was their material reserve. Therefore, the Allies almost dismantled the entire planet. Large areas of the continental shelf were flipped open. Hundreds of kilometers of rock strata were crushed by huge drills. Magnetic centrifuges were used to separate different atomic elements. Planet Chitauri was changing shape and disappearing. Only 3 hours later, the Chitauri Vanguard troops only saw the planet's skeleton on their home planet. What replaced it was a space defense system formed by countless layers of space extensions, battleships and motherships, floating cannons, armed satellites, and endless invading armies. Among them were clones and humans wrapped in mechanical suits, kinetic skeletons, and space bubbles, as well as a large number of war and industrial robots. The war was intense. The Republic activated the gravity well defense system to block the Chitauri fleet outside the solar system, while the robots and Black Star troopers fought with the landing troops of the Chitauri. The Soviet Black Star troopers moved quickly on the surface with their mechanical suit. The space bubble and tractor beam system in this area were destroyed by the Chitauri in the last attack, so the troopers could only move forward on foot. The team was made up of 5 Black Star troopers, and one of them was a combat engineer. He was responsible for controlling more than 50,000 Terminator robots and 10 units of nanoworms. Combat engineers needed the protection of their teammates to survive on the battlefield. Other than that, the team also had a military commander, Commissar Kajinov. However, he didn't need protection. In fact, the Commissar's combat ability was multiple times that of a normal Black Star trooper. This was because they had an iron will to fight. For the Black Star troopers, the will to fight was their life force, their combat ability, and their attack power. Their modified biological and mechanical organs made them almost immortal as long as their will was strong enough. Kajinov had lost 3 arms, 6 legs, and half of his body several times, including his lower body and the right half of his body. But even if half of his brain was blown off by the Chitauris, he would not be able to escape. Under the control of the biochip, he had also slaughtered 60 Zetarians with his bare hands, and the Soviets were still unable to determine whether Comrade Kadynov was dead or alive. Comrade Turgenev. Commissar Kadynov crushed the skull under his feet, took out the anesthetic tobacco in his mouth, and said, "How far are we from the three-phase portal?" "Less than 50 kilometers, Comrade Commissar." Turgenev looked at the projected map in his hand and said, "We are close to the active zone of the Chitauri. Because of the interference of the portal, our comrades in China can't expand the dimensional bubble defense system here. The Chitauri bastards are good at finding this kind of loophole. Yeah. Cunning alien bastards, if it weren't for the fact that China's space technology is more advanced than theirs, our casualties would be much greater. The Chitauris at the space gate are constantly dying. The corpses have piled up to 3 meters high. Hurry up and pull the space gate back. Comrades, we can kill those alien bastards again." Kadynov waved his hand. Hurrah! Even though there were only 5 of them, their cheers were like thousands of soldiers and horses. The team's movement speed was not slow. Their power suits were equipped with gravitational ropes, which made it easy to move around the planet. This was also an important project between the Republic and the Soviet. According to the requirements of the Soviet Black Star troopers, gravitational ropes were widely used and convenient, including as weapons. Under the protection of the new alloy shell of the power suits, the Black Star troopers flew at a speed that broke the sound barrier. Very soon they saw the three-phase portal. A flash of bright red floated high above the corpses in front of the portal. The Chitauri corpses and burning metal wreckage crashed into the horrible snake-shaped aircraft. The wet pile was below. The blood and internal organs made the red flag brighter. As they got closer, the pungent smell of corpses and burning metal wafted over. Fortunately, every Black Star trooper was familiar with this smell. They stepped on the metal wreckage and corpses and approached the portal. The air was filled with high radiation and high temperature. It burned the nerves of the Black Star troopers through the biochemical lungs. The pain was accompanied by excitement, and it lifted their spirits. "There seems to be a change in the portal. The density of Tyra particles around us has increased," Turgenev warned. "Let's not worry about that for now. Quickly install the space beacon. Our comrades from China are waiting for us. No matter what the Chitauri are planning, with our comrades from China's hyperspace support, we don't have to worry about not having reinforcements and a way out." Commissar Kadynov quickly fixed a few metal shuttles. Soon, nanoworms swarmed over and wrapped around the metal shuttles. Watching the metal shuttles disappear on the surface, Kadynov heard a scream beside his ear. "Commissar, look behind you!" A blinding light beam shot out from the direction of the portal. The violent energy wave caused the surroundings to shake violently. The energy spread out quickly with the space around them at a low to medium frequency. Even with the physical condition of the Black Star troopers, they felt extremely uncomfortable. Kadynov vaguely saw a few blurry shadows in the center of the strong light. He shouted, "Hurrah!" and asked his comrades to find his position and direction. Then, he took out a small strong gravity grenade and threw it at the center of the portal. Behind the portal, a young man in golden armor looked at the opposite side with a face full of disbelief. He raised his scepter blankly and touched the air on the opposite side gently, as if he was trying to expose a clumsy trick. The gravity grenade was affected by the opening of the dimensional door, and the explosion missed the young man by a little. The things piled up outside the dimensional door, corpses, internal organs, broken spaceship debris, radiation, and metal fragments flew at the young man's face, and the people behind him were also affected. He wiped his face. His face was as white as a sheet of paper. He asked helplessly, "What's going on? What happened?" Chapter 235. P.S. There are some logical errors in this chapter, and it's too lame. I'm not satisfied and have to rewrite it. Want? Everyone, take a look first. I'll replace this version with the rewritten version tomorrow. What happened here? Why did Loki open this door? Black Widow couldn't help but frown. What exactly are you going to do? Thor couldn't help but interrupt the dazed Loki. He grabbed his collar and shook him. What do you want to do? You said you want to invade Earth? You said you have an army? Then what's your scheme for bringing us here? Where did you open the door to? Loki weakly let go of the scepter in his hand and said in a daze, This is impossible. This is impossible. Captain America grabbed Thor's hand and stopped him from swinging his angry iron fist at his brother. He said to him, Thor, your brother may not know what happened. I believe he's not pretending to be in such a daze. Something must have happened here that he couldn't have imagined. Thor checked the traces on the ground. The blood is very fresh. It seems that the battle didn't last long. On the roof of the Stark building, a group of America's most outstanding heroes and a stunned villain looked at the mountain of corpses and sea of blood opposite the door and fell into unspeakable shock and silence. The atmosphere was really a little strange. It's aliens, Stark said to Nick. Only S.H.I.E.L.D. could still carry out a clear investigation here. They gathered a body and began to analyze it from all aspects, looking for all useful and useless information. Loki and the other heroes, who knew more, felt their hearts turn into a mess. Countless strange and bizarre thoughts intertwined in their minds like a tangled knot without a thread. No one here was an idiot. Smart people would always think more. There are about 50,000 corpses here. Considering the traces left by high-energy weapons and energy-converged strikes on the wreckage, there may be more dead. The other party didn't leave any bodies. Maybe they kept them after winning. It's also possible that they didn't have any casualties, Nick added. He looked at Tony as if to say, Is that what you mean? Tony answered him with silence, and began to tell him something new. Judging from the wreckage at the scene, he said, both of their technologies are far superior to ours. Thor told us that those corpses should belong to the Zutari. They are a famous war race in the universe. They are very powerful. The wreckage left behind by the Chitauri also proves this point. The metal used in the spaceship is of a very high grade, dozens of times higher than our company's product. This was definitely the standard of an interstellar civilization. Their weapons are very exquisite, and they are far from us in terms of energy utilization. With all due respect, if the army Loki is talking about is them, we are really lucky. Since you've said so much, can you tell me who their enemy is? Nick opened his arms and gestured to the crowd. I can see which side is the real threat. There aren't many clues at the scene. They cleaned it up very cleanly, and Thor also said that he couldn't think of anyone who could do this. At this time, Thor interrupted the two and interrupted. It's not that no other civilization can do it, but it's not certain. There isn't even a suspect. This is not normal. Hulk glanced at him and suddenly asked, Why is it not normal? This universe is orderly. Except for isolated interstellar civilizations like Earth, most civilizations and races live in an orderly cosmic environment. We understand each other, exchange information, communicate, and form a world of known civilizations. But there are things outside the known here. I can't see those familiar shadows, and all I see are strange things. Completely without a trace of familiarity, so I can't doubt that this is not normal. There must be something normal, something outside the known world involved. Things had reached a dead end here. Time was too short, and there was too little information, so only Loki could understand the truth here. He was silent, and his gloomy temperament seemed to be pregnant with something terrible, but Captain America had to make him speak. What was happening here made everyone feel a sense of urgency. What are you hiding? Loki looked at Captain America sitting in front of him. His eyes made Captain America feel strange, as if Loki was not looking at him, but looking at another existence through him. After a long time, Loki said, Do you know? You humans don't actually know yourselves. I admit that something unexpected happened and I lost. But you didn't win. From the portal to the farthest point of everyone's sight, the corpses spread for dozens of miles. There were no less than tens of thousands of corpses buried under the ruins, burned by high temperature, and vaporized by high energy, and countless more. The flesh and blood converged into an ocean, and the dark red color made people's hearts palpitate. Iron Man and Hulk were shocked speechless when they saw this scene. Even Captain America, who had experienced the bloodiest and darkest World War II, found it difficult to look directly at this scene of naked malice toward life. Other heroes who lived in peaceful times couldn't face such a scene. Loki was on the verge of madness. He used the psychic scepter to search the memories of the Chitauri corpses in anger and fear. Iron Man and the others looked at the flag flying on the mountain of corpses, dumbfounded. They had all imagined the situation on the other side of the portal. Some were strange, but none of them were strange to this extent. A country that had already perished on Earth, a flag that had been buried in history, was now openly flying on an alien planet. In such a strange scene, no one knew what to say. Until they saw the figures not far away, everyone suddenly became alert. Those silhouettes looked very tall and big. When they got closer, Tony could see that they were wearing ferocious-looking metal-powered mechas. Their fierce and aggressive designs made people feel nervous. The leading mecha warrior opened his helmet to reveal a human face full of scars. The bionic mecha glanced at them and said in Miasophic-accented English, "Warning! You are entering the Soviet defense zone. Raise your hands for inspection." The psychic scepter was pulled out from the corpse. Only then did Loki recover from the shock of reading the memories. The Soviet Black Star Trooper pointed a gun at his head. He knew these soldiers, and he was familiar with the weapons in their hands. In those memories, the Zetarians had died of cerebral hemorrhage made by this weapon. He also knew that if he hesitated for a moment, these soldiers would throw the point mass generator in their hand. The gravity of the point mass, which was dozens of times stronger than the nuclear gravity of the white dwarf star, would tear him into a cluster of atoms and throw him into some unknown dimension. That's true for those barbarians, but not for me. The psychic scepter in Loki's hand glowed faintly. To be continued. Chapter 236. I'll report what you said to my superiors, but for safety reasons, I hope you'll be in a non-hostile state for the rest of the journey, Commissar Kadanoff warned them. With their human appearance, the Avengers wouldn't be regarded as enemies by the Black Star Troopers. It had only been 3 years since they entered the era of the Communist Alliance, and the gap between the countries and nations of the Alliance had become very small. In an era of extreme material abundance, humans had become more rational and upright. Although they were facing the Americans, whom they disliked the most, Kadanoff still maintained goodwill. In the interstellar era, a human regime wouldn't be their enemy. We're still at war with the Zetaris, and we're cautious about contacting most aliens, Kadanoff explained to the Avengers. Kadanoff explained to the Avengers as he led a group of people to the main base to report the abnormalities of the portal to his superiors. Nick stayed at the other end of the portal with the information they had obtained. It was conceivable that the whole world would be shocked again. But this time, it would really change the structure of the world. A parallel universe with the same structure as Earth, and 3 communist countries with the ability to colonize the universe and defeat the alien army of this universe. It was hard to overestimate the impact of this on the whole world. Just this difference was enough to make the President of the United States scratch his head, not to mention that there were 3 major forces on Earth that shared the same culture and origins as the 3 alliances. Redefining the relationship between China, Russia, and the European Union was also a big problem. Losing its position as the hegemon was a foregone conclusion. How to maintain the international status of the United States? Nick needed to consider more. Along the way, the Avengers were relatively silent. Traces of war could be seen everywhere. Just some insignificant ruins left behind shocked and worried Captain America. Are we approaching the base through teleportation? Captain America couldn't help but ask. He didn't feel any obvious spatial changes along the way. He just went in and out of some underground fortifications, large bases, and land war vehicles, but the outside environment was constantly changing. The angle of the stars in the sky also changed greatly, giving him some vague guesses. Commissar Katanov didn't hide anything. We're applying for a two-phase dimensional orbit. There are a lot of security checks on the way to the base, so we need to make a transfer point. You said you've built a teleportation system? Thor couldn't help but question. I don't doubt your ability, but the portal and the teleportation system are two different things. Even in Asgard, the Bifrost is an unprecedented achievement, a great miracle that can't be replicated. Your human lifespan is not long enough for you to progress in the study of space. We Asgardians have a lifespan of 5,000 years. In terms of spatial knowledge, only the most ancient people in the divine realm can master it. All of them have experienced the most beautiful learning for nearly 4,000 years. Only then can I master it on the final journey of my life. You haven't even touched the surface of spatial knowledge in 100 years, Thor said with certainty. In fact, I spent 2,000 years and still couldn't learn it. With your lifespan, it's already a miracle that you can open a portal. That's because you're stupid, Thor. The captive Loki laughed at him mercilessly. Your brain is full of muscles, so you can't learn. When he turned to Katanov, his face was very solemn. This is indeed a remarkable achievement. Your spatial system is very efficient, and the energy fluctuations are very small. Their adaptability is also very strong. The teleportation process is like walking. The Rainbow Bridge was like shoving a man through a pipe the size of a bowl. It was incredibly smooth, and the spatial fluctuations were incredibly small. Although it was only a glimpse, Loki could feel the horror of the human civilization he had encountered this time. Asgard's Rainbow Bridge was one of the most remarkable achievements in the entire universe, and the pride of the people in the divine realm. It was built in ancient times and could not be replicated. It was the pinnacle of Asgard's civilization, but compared to the teleportation system used by humans in other realms, it was too low-level. Human technology in the teleportation system was simply terrifying. Unlike Thor, whose brain was full of muscles, Loki learned spatial magic and technology better. He could see the Republic's groundbreaking achievements in space technology. The teleportation process took place in a spatial bubble. Each spatial bubble was an independent space with a radius of 200 meters and a height of 50 meters. They were teleported along with the entire independent space, which was the key to why the teleportation process was so smooth. But Asgard couldn't imitate it. Not to mention the difficulty of the transition from teleporting creatures to teleporting independent spaces, Loki knew that it was no less difficult than the breakthrough from teleporting inanimate matter to teleporting living beings. Just the technology of spatial bubbles was a natural moat for Asgard. Creating an independent three-dimensional space in the universe was only one dimension away from destroying the universe. With spatial bubble technology, humans could carry a large amount of material and even teleport an entire planet, as long as they could create such a large spatial bubble. Humans could ignore attacks that couldn't interfere with space. Even if they could interfere with space, it would be meaningless if they couldn't break through the defense of the spatial bubble. It's hard to imagine that this was done by humans. Loki lowered his head and smiled, his eyes unreadable. He said playfully, I even suspect that you are not the same kind of human beings as them. Maybe you were created by God and they evolved from monkeys. Otherwise, there's no way to explain the difference between the two civilizations. Do you believe that bloodline determines all this? Commissar Katanov asked Loki bluntly. If this is the case, then you are undoubtedly an inferior species. It took hundreds of thousands of years for humans to go from primitive society to bronze civilization, but it only took 3,000 years for humans to go from Bronze Age to industrial civilization, and it took less than 2 centuries to achieve another breakthrough and enter the information age. Now we have achieved the era of the big universe, a super-dimensional civilization, and you are still trapped in a single universe, unable to even interfere with the timeline. Who is the superior species? It goes without saying. We are only separated by the distance of rebirth from the fire, only the difference of facing despair once. Kadanoff looked at the Avengers and said firmly, "You can never imagine what kind of training we have gone through to break free from that nightmare. Hundreds of millions of humans live forever in the light. When the sun goes dark, death lives forever. Despair suddenly comes, and the apocalypse falls from the sky. War leads to famine, and plague brings death. The angel blows the horn and announces the end of the world. Some flee the earth, and some turn into ashes. Some return to the source sea, and some become ghosts. The last people leave that world and wander without a home." Chapter 237. The faint smell of blood in Kadanoff's words made the Avengers' hair stand on end. It wasn't that they didn't understand the meaning of these words. On the contrary, a lot of information was familiar to them. Bone-chilling familiarity. The moment the word left Kadanoff's mouth, the Avengers almost screamed. The nightmarish feeling lingered around them again. Hearing those familiar names and terms, everyone could feel an irresistible, turbulent undercurrent quietly surging around them. Captain America's face was completely heavy. His brows furrowed like a mountain, and he couldn't help but tighten the shield in his hand. Kadanoff took them to the periphery of an underground base. The surrounding metal walls had a soft white light, very close to natural light. When they got closer, they could feel the natural breathing coming from the metal surface. Above them was a transparent floating window that could see the outer space of the Chitauri planet. Seeing this, the Avengers all knew that the Chitauri were almost completely at a disadvantage and had no power to fight back. Otherwise, a civilization addicted to war would not have the mind to set up these things. The huge wreckage that was visible to the naked eye also proved this. "This is?" Black Widow couldn't help but touch the porthole, her nails scratching the projection of the huge battleships. The large spaceship of the Chitauri looked like a living creature. It was the shape of a sea dragon. It was very ferocious, with their barbaric and cruel style. It looked very visually impactful. Especially the wreckage that was almost destroyed, they were very conspicuous outside the satellite and could be seen clearly from the atmosphere. The metal shell of the spaceship was almost twisted out of shape. The strong gravity almost folded them. Some looked like they had been trampled flat, and some looked like they were twisted into a ball. "That's solid, right?" Loki suddenly turned his head and asked. Black Widow was surprised. "What?" "I said that it's solid," Loki repeated with a smile. "I know the Chitauri better than you. After all, they used to be my allies. The Chitauri's combat ability is very strong. Such a battleship is not the iron shell of you humans. It is equivalent to a solid metal ball. The weapons in the War Legion under the command of Thanos are countless times stronger than you can imagine. There are many data that you can't even imagine. Through synergistic external stress technology, the strength of the metal structure supporting the spaceship can reach the level of a white dwarf." Kjinov looked at him in surprise, as if he was sizing up his value. After a while, he nodded and said, "Yes, even we haven't mastered this technology. It's an advanced application of the 4 fundamental forces. Our research team is still working on it. You know quite a lot. The highest political commissar has approved your teleportation right. Follow me." The Avengers followed him into the base. When Black Widow passed by Loki, she brushed past his ear and asked casually, "Since the performance of that metal material is so outstanding, why don't you use it? What level of power was it that destroyed it?" Loki whispered in her ear, "That level of power is meaningless in your mathematical system. Do not measure us with your shallow thoughts, mortal. What we do is beyond your comprehension. Even a basic mathematical unit would take you another 10 years to understand. Of course, this is the speed of us Asgardians. As if bursting a bubble, the Avengers arrived at a more spacious field. The buildings and city structure were so huge that they couldn't see the end. It was vivid and real, and the whole city was full of fantasy. That feeling just now was a space bubble? Black Widow looked back curiously, only to see the other half of the city. The underground base behind them had disappeared without a trace. Loki laughed in a low and mellow voice, stirring up Black Widow's thoughts. That's not it. The base we passed just now. It's part of the space bubble. Their technology is already enough to build a city inside. In fact, we are just moving around in the space bubble. The entire planet's space has been divided into two parts, connected by a group of space bubbles, as a two-part transverse labyrinth. The Chitauri want to break through from that half of the planet. They have to pass through this space structure. The independent spaces here can be closed at any time, and then Loki made a gesture of popping a bubble. The entire space and everything in it will disappear without a trace. To the Avengers' surprise, there were many people in the city, and most of them were not soldiers. It seemed that one Chitauri was not enough to make them enter a state of war. Two young Asian teenagers looked at the group of strangers curiously. When they saw the Iron Man armor, their eyes suddenly lit up. Tony was very familiar with this kind of look, and he enjoyed it very much. He waved his hand, feeling good about himself, and adjusted the Iron Man armor on his body to a cooler state. Stark, you'd better stop showing off. Captain America couldn't help but warn him. You're jealous that the children love me. Tony didn't care. Hey. Hello, boys. He waved to the two teenagers. Hello. The two teenagers nodded politely. Kadanoff laughed. It's the boys from China. They should be dismissed. The Republic of China is the pillar of the Communist Alliance. Their soldiers are very powerful, and their technology is the most advanced in the Alliance. They lead the entire Communist Alliance in the fields of space physics and energy physics. I like physics, Tawny said confidently. Can you show me your armor? The taller boy ran up to Tawny and asked him shyly, Can you show me your armor? Tawny felt good about showing off in the unfamiliar environment of an alien planet. He struck a pose that highlighted his tall image and said to the two, Do you want me to come closer? No need. The boy waved his hand. Just stand there for a while. It was the first time Tawny had heard such an answer. Under normal circumstances, men couldn't help but come up and touch his armor. No man could resist the temptation of this kind of war. Tawny had always believed so. He saw the boy stretch out his left hand and press down 50 centimeters away from him. Countless thin blue threads of light wrapped around Tony's body. The blue light with great penetrating power swept across Tony's body, making him feel like he was naked in front of a large crowd. A translucent miniaturized model was constructed by the light and floated in front of the boy. Tawny was surprised to find that it was almost the blueprint of the Mark V. The original had been scaled down, and many of the parts that involved high-precision energy and materials were very clear. According to this, even if the original could not be replicated, the Mark V would no longer be a secret. Thank you, the boy said to Stark happily. Tawny turned around and stared at Kadanoff in shock and anger. He didn't care if someone copied him, but he hated being schemed against. There was no doubt that his armor had been replicated. He believed that Kadanoff had deliberately arranged it. Kadanoff understood the look in his eyes and shook his head at him slightly. I'm afraid you've guessed wrong. What you think we value, we actually don't. The Mark V in the boy's palm had been magnified 10 times and was clearly projected in front of everyone. The cold mutation core is 3 generations behind. Get rid of it. The anti-gravity engine is an old version for near-planetary environments. It can't leave the planet's gravity. It's better to replace it with a retro version of the anti-gravity void field. The outer metal outline. The data of this alloy is very strange. It's not in the database. It's more suitable to use the abnormal microparticle type HA992 adamantium. The aerodynamic shape has been submitted to the large database for calculation. The mechanical structure has been submitted to the intelligent brain task and applied for the personal intelligent AI. It's actually a silicon-based material computer. Replace it with a quantum 2 optical brain. In just a few breaths, the blueprint in his palm had changed a large part. Layers upon layers of dazzling virtual blueprints were nested on the model. In the blink of an eye, even Stark couldn't recognize it. As Tawny's eyelids twitched wildly, he saw a child less than 10 meters away from him change his blueprint beyond recognition. Then, the child operated on his palm. Request material support. The liquid metal squeezed out from the void between the two of them. The silver solution floated in the air like a pearl. Personal Portable Industrial System Link External Database. Floating light and electricity representing the microforce field constantly emerged from the boy's body. The microforce field energy field composed of controllable high-energy atoms as the core enveloped the silver metal liquid. The light spots constantly swam, finally adjusting the particle structure of the metal with the state of the particle force field. The finished product was printed out in the void with single atoms as the unit. The whole part was formed at once. In just a few minutes, a brand new armor that looked like the Mark V was made. The size and model were completely made according to the boy's figure. Chapter 238. The mechanical armor pieces followed the curve of the human body and wrapped around the boy. The blue and silver metal armor was very modern. It was not as arrogant as Stark's red and gold armor, but it was more elegant and delicate. From the moment the child mobilized the industrial support of the Republic and used the AI atoms to create the steel armor on the blueprint, to the moment the entire armor was formed, most of the people did not even have the time to react. This was because it was beyond their comprehension. Each Tawny armor cost more than $200 million and was made by Stark Industries without hesitation. It represented not only Tawny's monstrous financial resources, but also Stark Industries' most advanced technology and industrial capability in the world. The highest achievement in the field of energy was the arc reactor. The pinnacle of human power was the anti-gravity engine. The crystallization of Stark Industries' AI in the field of artificial intelligence was Jarvis. These were advanced technologies that even the U.S. government couldn't replicate. It was the fusion of Tawny's personal wisdom and Stark Industries' advanced technology. It not only represented the forefront of applied science, but it was also a symbol of Stark Industries and the overall industrial strength of the U.S. Even if the blueprints and technology were released to the public, not many countries in the world could make a sample. Maybe Russia could make half of it, and China could make a low-spec version. The whole of Europe would have to unite to make a sample at a high cost. Tony, how much did you quote to the Department of Defense for the Mark V? Black Widow elbowed Stark, who was so surprised that he couldn't close his mouth. $500 million. Stark hadn't recovered yet and stared blankly at the blue and silver armor. $500 million for the Iron Patriot. It's just a modified version of the Mark I, and it's at least 2 generations behind the Mark V. Agent Hill couldn't help but interrupt. She turned to Tawny and said, "Now your Iron Patriot is only worth $200 million. We won't spend that much money on a weapon that's already outdated." "How much do you want for the Mark V?" Black Widow asked in Tawny's ear. Tawny looked at her with a complicated expression and shook his head. "The Mark V is priceless. Come on. You can't monopolize this business anymore. Give me a real price." "It's really priceless. It's a technology verification machine that hasn't been finalized yet. We haven't mastered its production process, so it's impossible for us to industrialize it. It couldn't be a commodity. Naturally, there's no price." Tawny looked at the smaller Iron Man armor and said bitterly, I spent 16.2 billion on Mark V, but 13 days after it came out, it fell behind by a generation. What's a dollar? The boy leaned over and asked. That's our country's currency. Wait, do you understand what currency is? Black Widow asked him. The boy shook his head. I'm a genetically modified human, so my lifespan isn't as long as a normal human's. Today is my first birthday. The boy asked curiously, I've seen records of currency in history. Do you use it to buy goods? Clones. Tawny could not help but reveal a horrified expression. Although cloning technology was not far from the level of science on Earth, however, a living clone standing in front of them still shocked them. In order to preserve the spark of human civilization after the Great Apocalypse, the government specially formulated the Nuwa Project. After the human living environment suffered a catastrophic disaster, it could be preserved for millions of years until the ecosystem recovered. Genetically modified humans were bred and injected into the memory bank of human civilization. I am the result of the Nuwa Project. Although the project failed, we, who had already been bred into embryos, were still cultivated to replenish the population of the Republic of Republic. The boy did not seem to care about his background. Instead, he looked expectantly at Stark and the others and asked curiously, I've seen a lot of information about the past in the database. Is the way you treat currency real? Perhaps he felt that his words were too vague, so the boy tried to express it more tactfully. Is it the kind of very persistent? He used an uncertain word that was not so sharp. Persistent? What you want to say is madness and stupidity. Tawny nodded. That's because you can't see what it represents. Currency is a distribution of power. It's like a kind of authority, the authority to control the entire world. When you have it, it's equivalent to having the power behind it. We use currency to coordinate and distribute goods. It makes our world run reasonably and smoothly. Tawny gestured. You may think this is very unfair, but it's closer to the essence of the world. Are you a communist system? Your needs are suppressed by the distribution system. Perhaps you think that some people enjoy extravagance and some people have nothing. This is very unfair, but this is the beauty of the world. Human nature determines all of this. The difference makes the entire world full of vitality, like catfish in a school of sardines, stimulating the development of the entire world. This system is more lovely than the rigid and rotten distribution system, beautiful. Good wine, luxury cars, and trampolines. Without these, my life would lose half of its meaning. Greed is where human nature is, and those who try to erase human nature, no matter how glorious the banner is, are bound to be cruel and crazy. What we seek is this great flash of freedom that embodies human nature. Freedom is human nature. Tawny's tone was proud. He smiled and opened his arms. But the look in Kadanov's eyes made him feel very strange. You seem to have something to say, sir? China is the most special member of the alliance. The way Kadanov looked at the Avenger made them feel uncomfortable. It was a mixture of insight and impatience, like a person standing downstream of history looking down at the old, ridiculous customs of the past. The Republic is not like the Soviet Union or the European Community. They don't even have a distribution system. There are no goods, no currency, and none of the appearances you seek. As long as there is material, they have everything. The personal system can meet most of the needs of China, comrade. The production capacity of industry is in the hands of real workers. Every China comrade is a factory, the deepest and most essential combination of workers and production tools. All the products of labor that you can buy with dollars can be produced by them at will. The material they can enjoy is unlimited. Each of them can match the production capacity of a complete industrial country. They are truly free. Your freedom requires money, but they don't. But they don't show no motivation. They don't indulge in enjoyment and extravagance. They don't indulge in material things. The whole society doesn't lose its motivation. On the contrary, they abandon greed, cruelty, cunning, deception, and arrogance and become truly noble. Human nature doesn't seem to be low. After the China comrades liberate themselves and gain true freedom, human nature seems to have become pure and simple. Kadanoff impatiently stopped Captain America, who was about to speak. 3 years ago, no one would have thought that today would come. What you said was regarded as the truth at that time. At that time, we really believed that human nature was immutable, but a scam is still a scam. You try to make us believe that there can be no exploiters in this world, just like the nobles in the Middle Ages tried to make serfs believe that the nobles were protecting them. You use cruel means, shameless deception, anything you can think of to prevent anyone, everyone, from revealing a secret. That is, the world doesn't need you. Serfs don't need nobles, and workers don't need exploiters. It's you who need us. Now, you may still believe in your lies, but the facts will prove that without you, human beings, the world will be a better place. Chapter 239. Kadanoff's voice was not loud, but it was clear enough. In terms of eloquence, Tani, who had been in social circles and among women since he was a child, could beat him by more than 10 street. But at this moment, in the face of the miracle-like world around him, Tani felt as if his tongue had been rooted, and he couldn't say a word. He opened his mouth awkwardly for a long time, not knowing what to say. Only then did he feel the paleness of words in front of the fact. They had gone deep into the base of the Communist Alliance, and they were surrounded by a world beyond their imagination. The soft grass was spread under their feet, the flowering trees were entwined around them, and the fresh fragrance of soil, flowers, and sunshine in the air was relaxing. This place was not like the center of the city, but more like the nature closest to human beings. Only by seeing the technological products that were integrated with the plants, like art, and the magical buildings that blended into the surrounding environment, could people realize that this was a city from the future. We are walking the same path. Although you are ahead of us, that doesn't mean you can laugh at us. We just haven't gone there yet. Captain America looked at Kadanoff without showing any weakness. You just have a little more time. Well said. Kadanoff smiled and extended his hand in invitation. Then join us. As a human being, integrate into this glorious era, forget all the rules you established in the past era, accept this great and glorious era, and enjoy the true freedom of human beings. Your identity, your status, and all the imprints of your past will lose most of their meaning, leaving only the most core things. Wisdom, courage, noble character, persistent faith, and firm will. Apart from that, you will have nothing. Kadanoff looked into Captain America's eyes as if asking him, "Do you dare?" People have the right to choose freely. Since I have chosen to stand with them, I will defend everything to the end. My force field will always be firm, and my shield will always fight to protect them. Anyone who violates their choice, whether it is a criminal, an alien invader, or anyone else, even if it is our government, I will fight them to the end. Obviously, it's impossible for me to abandon Stark Industries with just a few words. Tani said seriously, I'm only complete when I'm with my company. This has nothing to do with money, power, or anything else. It's a part of me, it's where my dreams lie. It's as inseparable as this body of steel. When I say have nothing, I don't mean lose everything. On the contrary, I mean have everything. Kadanoff shook his head. Material, everything you can imagine, everything you can have it. Because it is infinite, because it is senseless. Apart from your essence, the things that make you human. Everything else would be like air, yours to possess, but it would be meaningless. Try to imagine that you are in a small space where you are suffocating. They killed each other for the slightest bit of oxygen, greedily occupying that bit of resources. Use all shameless, despicable, and cruel means to possess her. Revealing the essence of the problem, Kadanoff seemed to have pulled out all the thoughts of the Avengers, those little secrets in the dark, complex, dusty, not so heroic things were pulled out from the depths of their thoughts, from under the skin of morality. Captain America and Tawny couldn't help but feel a sense of irritation and instinctively become angry with Kadanoff. The heroes of the Avengers quickly got rid of this feeling. They knew it wasn't a good performance, but the feeling of being forced to face something they didn't want to face still made them feel embarrassed. Kadanoff's words were like a blade, cutting open the surface of the prosperous era on Earth that the Avengers were proud of, revealing the paleness and emptiness behind it. Now we are going to open the window. The despicableness and shamelessness that you insist on are meaningless. What once allowed you to survive and gave you status is now just proof of your despicableness. Everything that was once greedy for possession. Kadanoff made a gesture of being blown away by the wind. If the despicableness of possession is your position, if the greed that allowed you to survive is your faith, then I can tell you that the darkness has passed and the dawn is coming. If you insist, then I can only tell you, your position is meaningless, your faith is not worth mentioning. Enough! Captain America interrupted him angrily. You are not qualified to talk about my faith. You are too far away from it and I am too close to it. I have been sleeping since World War II, but I can still see it today. That spirit is shining. It has shone for a century, created an era, and will inevitably continue to exist. I will use my life to guard and practice it. Captain America raised his shield and said in the most resolute manner, I swear to fight for freedom. Tawny also placed his hand on Captain America's shield and said with the same sincerity, This time, I completely agree with you. I swear to fight for the United States, for the freedom of mankind. For the freedom of mankind. Hulk, no, now it should be Dr. Bruce, also placed his huge right hand on the back of Stark's hand and said solemnly. The three of them looked at each other. Their eyes were very firm, and they all had the determination to give everything they had. Count me in, my friends from Earth. Thor laughed and put his right fist on the shield. Asgard is willing to fight for freedom. Loki hesitated for a moment and tried to put his hand on the shield, but he was glared at by several people. He raised his palms innocently, indicating that he had no malice, and then slowly stepped back to stand next to Kadanoff. I am also willing to fight for freedom, but I will always stand on the winning side. Hawkeye silently added his hand. Only Black Widow was left among the Avengers. Everyone looked at her, especially Bruce. He looked at her with eyes full of expectation, but Black Widow's silence scared them. Natasha, we are waiting for you, Bruce said anxiously. But Black Widow was unmoved. Everyone had a bad feeling in their hearts. Tawny tried to make a joke. Putting my hand together with three men makes me feel awkward. Come on, Natalie, I can't wait. But the Black Widow still maintained a puzzling silence, and a strange atmosphere suddenly spread between them, although she did not make a sound. But the silence had already explained her choice. Sorry. Black Widow waved her hand. Why? Bruce asked desperately. The United States is your country, but you are with us. We are family, partners. You are a real hero, and we know how much you have done for this country, Bruce said excitedly. But that is because my country is dead, Black Widow roared. My soul has no support and it wanders at will. Without it, everything I do is meaningless. I feel disgusted by the monster who stood up from the corpse of my country, so I can only choose for myself. It's not like that. Bruce was about to lose his mind. He looked at the woman in front of him in despair. You love us. There is a real bond between you and me, sorry? Black Widow slowly stepped back and stood with Kadanoff. She suppressed her emotions, but her voice was already sobbing. She was sorry. It was a strong nasal sound. But I have faith. Black Widow said this sentence very softly. If it were not for the fact that everyone present was not an ordinary person, no one would have heard it. This sentence made Bruce feel like he was struck by lightning. Tawny and Captain America also revealed shocked expressions. They had never been as shocked as this moment in their lives. Everyone had an expression of disbelief on their faces. I see a building. A narrow door in front of it is wide open. Behind the door is a thick, dark fog. Outside the high threshold stood a girl, a Russian girl. Natalie read Turgenev's prose in a low voice. Kadanoff also softly read with her. The wind blew through the thick fog, and there was a chill coming from the depths of the building. At the same time, there was a slow, heavy voice asking, what do you want to do in this threshold? Do you know what is waiting for you inside? I know, the girl replied. Cold, hunger, hate, ridicule, contempt, insult, prison, disease, even death? I know. Estranged from people, completely alone? I know. I am ready. I am willing to endure all the pain, all the blows. Not only your enemy. Even your relatives and friends will give you this kind of pain, this kind of blow. Yes, even if they give me these, I have to endure it. Good. Are you also ready to sacrifice? Yes. This is a nameless sacrifice. You will die, and no one knows, and no one will revere you. I don't want to be remembered, I don't want to be pitied. I don't want fame. Are you willing to commit crimes? The girl lowered her head. I am also willing to commit crimes. The voice inside paused for a moment and then said these words. Do you know that in the future, when you are in trouble, you will deny this belief of yours? You will think that you have wasted your youth for nothing? I know that too. I only ask you to let me in. Come in. The girl stepped over the threshold. A thick curtain was immediately lowered. Fool! Someone sneered from behind. A saint, came the reply from somewhere. That's me, said Natalie. She raised her head, and her face was already radiant. Seeing such a smile, Bruce felt that this was Natalie with a soul. It was such a brilliant, sincere, and heartfelt smile that even made everything around her pale in comparison. It was as if Natalie's soul had descended from heaven just a moment ago, and at this moment, Natalie's soul had descended from heaven. Bruce was momentarily lost. Tawny and Rogers watched sadly as Natalie moved further and further away from them. Her voice came from the other side. Arise, slave of cold and hunger. Arise, sufferer of the world. My blood is boiling, fight for the truth. For the first time they knew that Natalie could sing, and that she could sing so beautifully. In the song, Under the Bright Sunshine, the Avengers split for the first time. An Avenger stood against her companions forever, willing to draw her sword against her former comrades for the sake of her beliefs and ideals, willing to sacrifice everything for justice and beauty. Chapter 240. Sunlight passed through the gaps in the clouds, dividing the space into two worlds of light and darkness. The Avengers stood in the shadows, and the people opposite them looked a little dazzling. Tawny tilted his head and squinted to barely see them. Natalie had recovered from her excitement and loss of control. Her expression was tranquil now, and there was even a sense of relief in the corners of her mouth. When she saw Tawny's gaze, she even had the mood to kiss him and mouth to him, "The next time we meet, we won't be friends, Stark." "Why?" Tawny said to her in his heart. But in the end, he didn't ask this question. Just like that, the two sides gradually drifted apart, and the Avengers drew a deep rift between them and the Communist alliance with the most resolute attitude. On the contrary, Kadanoff, who had always been hostile to them, seemed to not care, or rather, he was quite confident. Tawny could feel this arrogance. It was as if he were a transmigrator standing upstream in history and watching their rotting corpses. The firm belief that the world would be changed, that the persistence of the Avengers would decay, was unbearably arrogant. Tawny could even imagine Kadanoff saying to them in his usual flat tone, "We don't care about your persistence," because time, the world, and the truth were all on their side. The thought of that scene made him feel deep sorrow and anger. What made him even sadder was that he couldn't imagine the world developing in that direction. Would there still be any meaning to his existence? As a hero, his values and the meaning of his existence would be denied. In history, he was like a character in a stage play, just a part in life. No one would care about a superhero, Iron Man. They would only remember a billionaire, playboy, Avenger, and Superman, Tony Stark. A sudden invasion by the Chitauri interrupted the Avengers' contact with the Communist Alliance. Kadanoff also wanted to participate in the war, and Natalie also asked to go to the battlefield, even if it was just as a paramedic. According to Kadanoff, such attacks didn't stop for a day, usually once every 3 hours. Sometimes it happened 3 times an hour. From the terrifying battles with planets and galaxies as coordinates and space battleships as units, to the infiltration and killing within the atmosphere as combat radius, and the infiltration and killing of small teams as combat units, at every moment. Wars happen all the time. The Avengers were allowed to watch the battle. Even though they had their differences, they were still treated with a certain degree of courtesy in this human-dominated regime. They were not restricted in their freedom, and they were not monitored. This kind of confidence reminded Steve of America during World War II. They are just like us back then. North Koreans, China, Filipinos, and Indians. All the countries that have not been liberated, whatever their attitude towards the United States, as long as they are against fascism, we will welcome them. Are you saying that compared to the Chitauris, we are humans, so we are treated better? Dr. Bruce curled up in a small room, his tone not very good. Hulk is at least twice as tall as Tawny and the others, and he looks quite uncomfortable in a building prepared for humans. Also, Natalie's departure had left him in a bad mood. If it weren't for the professor's teaching and help, the Hulk would have gone crazy. That's not the point. Captain America looked at the fleet taking off outside the space prism and replied in a trance, "The point is that kind of confidence, the confidence of the Golden Age. Just like the United States before the victory of World War II. We believe that victory will belong to us. We believe that our army is unstoppable. No matter how strong evil is, justice will prevail in the end, and we represent justice. We tolerate all those who disagree, those who are wary of us, as long as they are not evil. At that time, whether the evil red axis wins in China or Eastern Europe falls to communism, we don't care. We welcome them all the same because God is with us. But this time, God will not be with the atheists." Tawny stood up and said maliciously. He motioned everyone to look at him. "Guys, you don't think we will be friendly with them forever, do you? Whether we will become enemies with them or not, we will not be friends. We are all humans," Captain America said helplessly. Stark said sarcastically, "The Nazis and we are all humans too. During the Cold War, we almost had a world war with them, and now there will be no peace. It will be nothing more than a Cold War, or a more powerful Iron Curtain. Don't forget, the cornerstone of maintaining world peace, the balance of terror under nuclear deterrence, has disappeared. They can destroy us at any time, wipe out the entire United States, and even the Earth." "Stark, don't be crazy." Tawny's words were clearly not to Captain America's liking. He stood up, looked at Tawny, and said seriously, "Freedom is more important than my life, and so is peace. If you adopt such a confrontational mindset, I think they will definitely not lose. Don't fantasize about victory, Tawny. I am pursuing peace. There will only be peace when there is a balance of power. Otherwise, just like what we did to the Indians, the civilized people here will also destroy our backward and barbaric elements," Tawny said seriously. "I love this country, so I want to protect it. When the world was peaceful, no one liked weapons, but now, I think it is time for Stark to restart the weapons industry." "Your actions are too dangerous, Stark. It is this world that is too dangerous," Tawny retorted, not showing any weakness. "You will drag the United States into the abyss. If you believe that we are right, why don't you dare to wait for time to prove it? Or do you not believe in what you stand for? What makes you stand with us is not your ideals, but your position. The victory of ideals is not in how powerful they are, but in how many people support them. Bruce couldn't help but refute. We will win, just like when the former Soviet Union fell. Humanity will choose us. The biggest enemy of the Communist Alliance is their people, as long as they are willing to believe in us. Because they did not lie to me, so I know. Tawny opened his hands, tilted his head, and said, I know more about politics than you do. It is useless. There is nothing that cannot be distorted, and there is nothing that cannot be discredited. Did you know that Washington likes to pull out black people's teeth? I even have a set of his false teeth. Who was Lincoln's killer? Do you know? Kennedy? And Marilyn Monroe? She was also murdered by a big consortium? Bruce asked reflexively. As soon as he finished speaking, he realized that he had made a slip of the tongue. He turned his head and didn't dare to look at Tawny. You see, you all know. You are just playing dumb. What determines the world is material, and what determines the society is the economy and strength. Sometimes you have to be unconventional, or you won't even have a chance in the future. This is the biggest lesson I have learned in the business world. Tawny glanced at the faces of his companions. Steve and Bruce's firm opposition disappointed him. Fortunately, Hawkeye and Thor were more supportive of him. Thor couldn't help but nod, then turned to look at Tawny and said, Well said, but how do you maintain that terrifying balance? A three-dimensional design appeared in Thor's palm. He stared at the core of the complex mechanical drawing, which was the projection of the 6 gems. Thor was stunned when the gems appeared. He looked at the image of the 6 gems and murmured in an incredulous tone, Infinity gems. The universe is big and mysterious. There are too many things we don't understand and too much history beyond our imagination. When Nick found me that day, I thought he was crazy. But I didn't expect that he just saw this day one step earlier. Humanity, the survival of the United States, there must be a great power to protect the world. The power of the 6 gems represents 6 ultimate weapons. Tawny suddenly looked up at Bruce. Do you remember the plan we discussed? You mean Ultron? Isn't it being designed? Sorry man, I lied to you. The real Ultron is a toy of S.H.I.E.L.D. They found a kind of power in Loki's scepter, a magical power, the real Ultron. What I gave you is only a part of the plan. The complete plan includes more than just the robot. Including today, I have drawn considerable inspiration. Loki? Thor couldn't help looking back at his brother. Loki looked at him innocently. These 6 weapons are the pinnacle of my design, Tony Stark, the world's largest arms dealer and the best killer of all human beings. It is the perfect combination of my personal ability and the strength of the country. It is also the most terrifying, safest, and most powerful weapon of all time. Ultron is just one of them. Chapter 241. On the other side of the dimensional rift, the citizens of New York City raised their heads curiously and looked at the deep, dark vortex above their heads, the universe that was countless light years away. To normal citizens, this was nothing more than a slightly fantastical mirage, a type of astronomical wonder. But to those who knew the truth, this was a real threat, and Nick's feelings were extremely complicated. It was as if he was relieved from a heavy burden, but there was also an indescribable bitterness. The other side of the dimensional rift was not the invading army of aliens. This was a good news that made him feel relieved. However, the political direction of the human society on the other side might not be a positive thing for this country. He instinctively wanted to hide everything, just like what S.H.I.E.L.D. did in the past, secretly contacting the opposite side. As for the ordinary people, they should live their lives however they should. It would be best if nothing went wrong. However, this time he knew that it was impossible. An iceberg was coming head-on. It was not something that could be ignored by blindfolding one's eyes. However, these were the troubles of the future. The most important thing now was to let the ruler of this country accept this matter. A bunch of idiots. Nick spat on the ground and said fiercely. Many people in this country would think that they would be ruled by a group of elites with super high IQ, drop-like temperament, serious attitude, and ability to do things. Just like what the government promoted to them, the elite politics took care of fairness and efficiency. The rulers could have the power because they were more outstanding. However, Nick would not believe these things. No one knew this group of idiots better than him. They might be a little more outstanding than the ordinary people, but it was all because the investment and education they received was more than 10 times more than the ordinary people in terms of talent, attitude, and wisdom. They were a group of ordinary people with a broader vision, more decent etiquette, and more experience. However, most of them had no chance of becoming an elite. Compared to SHIELD, which was a gathering of real elites, they were greedy and stupid, cowardly and disgusting. The Department of National Defense had real outstanding talents, West Point Military Academy had real outstanding talents, Wharton Business School had real outstanding talents, Ivy League produced batch after batch of elites, and SHIELD gathered all the elite. However, Nick had to admit that the ones leading and ruling them were a group of real idiots. The ruler of this country needed those elites to help them run their business, but they did not need anyone to covet their position. So they had their own rules of the game, confidence. They were calm, bold, and ruthless. Since they were young, they knew that their battlefield was a drunken banquet, a place of mutual deception and deceit. Therefore, they adapted to the rules of the game they set up like fish in water. One was decent, generous, and knowledgeable. The offspring who understood the rules of polite society were excellent heirs. But Nick knew. Confidence could be arrogance, calmness could become stupidity, boldness could sometimes be arrogance, and the other side of ruthlessness could be viciousness. In the rules of the game, they were outstanding. Excellent, but this world was not really a game world for them, and not everyone liked to play under other people's rules. For example, Nick knew a certain bastard who liked to play by his own rules. Ladies, gentlemen, we are facing an unprecedented challenge in the history of mankind. It can be said that from this moment on, every moment is history. What we are about to face is an unprecedented situation. All past experiences are useless. What we need to do is truly groundbreaking, decisive, and incomparably forward-looking work. Nick suppressed his anger and tried to persuade these idiots. So I ask you to make a decision that is truly decisive. General, that is exactly what we are doing. A committee member interrupted him impatiently and said, "What we are doing here is the decision that affects the world. Do you know how much economic loss the United States will suffer if Wall Street is not appeased? If we don't communicate with the bankers, how can we get support for our policies? Diplomacy, oil, the situation in the Middle East, counter-terrorism, and stability maintenance. Our agenda is very heavy, so please don't disrupt the process of the meeting, okay? Please proceed. I don't know if the world is decided by you, but I know that the behavior of the enemy will not be decided by you." Nick angrily interrupted him. "Open your eyes and see." Nick pointed out the window. "You think this is a threat? No, it is a revolution. It is a revolution where all the concepts and meanings that you are familiar with, everything that exists in your mind, have been turned upside down. Outside this planet, a world millions of light years away has appeared in front of us, but you are still talking about the trivial matters of this planet. Perhaps you think that it is a powerful force, but when the gears of fate began to turn, those things were already old, rotten, and lost their vitality. Finance, world trade, they were once important, but today, when the space-time door and the outerverse descended, they are no longer the mainstream of this world. How is the scientific research of the United States National Aeronautics and Space Administration?" Nick stood on the podium and asked the committee members below. "Progress is smooth. We will soon begin the 9th Mars exploration mission. Without the need for the committee members to speak, an elite from the Ivy League reported the data. What about the industrial strength of the Houston Aerospace Industrial Base and the Oak Forest National Laboratory? Nick continued to ask with his single eye flashing with a cold light. This is a complex set of data. Science and industry interact with each other. Materials, processes, experimental technology, reserve generation, it is very complicated. The Ivy League graduate answered with competence. We need time to gather the data. Nick nodded and looked at the silent committee members below the podium. He sneered and said, "No need. Just tell me how many parts of the spaceship we can produce." You can give me a rough idea. It can be a guess. Nick did not intend to make things difficult for him. The Ivy League graduates communicated with their alumni for a period of time before answering with more certainty. We can take out the experimental model, but that is a prototype that cannot be replicated. It is a relic from an extraterrestrial civilization, and the true technological and industrial strength of Earth is still completely foreign to the environment of the universe. Nick interrupted him. What can they produce? We don't know. The spokesperson shrugged. We do not have the technical reserve. Spaceships from outside the galaxy do not even exist for us. In other words, we can't even produce a screw on their spaceship, right? Yes. The committee members below the podium were already in an uproar. How many spaceships can we produce with Earth's resources? Resources exist in a broad sense. With the resources we can use now, all the industrial countries in the world can't produce a qualified spaceship even if they join forces. Even those in the solar system can't do it. The uproar below the podium was even greater. What about the foundation of the entire world? Our productivity, industry, creativity, and labor value, how different are they compared to the extraterrestrial civilization that we are currently in contact with? Nick pursued fiercely and asked relentlessly. This time, the Ivy League members discussed for a longer time. They began to argue until their faces were red. As time passed, they began to make phone calls, quarreling, insulting, feinting, and torturing each other until it became a pot of porridge. Then, they slowly came to a consensus and the quarrel calmed down. Finally, they gave an answer. 9 hours had already passed. An old Ivy with a head full of messy white hair and goosebumps all over his body was elected to make their final judgment. The production capacity of the entire human society, including the experimental capacity and the industrial potential within 2 months, the entire human race combined cannot compare to the production capacity of a spaceship. Even if they used hammers to create spaceships, the industrial capacity of their hammers is still greater than the sum of our industries. There was dead silence in the meeting room. Nick glanced around and looked at the ugly elites. He sneered. Now do you all understand what we are facing? He casually flipped open the notes of the key topics discussed in the previous meeting. Looking at the dazzling data, the symbols representing currencies, and the complicated financial analysis, he shook his head and sneered. Wall Street. Chi. Chapter 242. A finger swept across the space of the venue, as if a pause button had been pressed. The expressions of the committee members, who were either sarcastic or solemn, froze in the air. On the stage, Nick's mouth was slightly open, and his expression was frozen like a stone statue. On the other side, the white-haired Nick retracted his right index finger. This is indeed interesting. I remember that this is very similar to a time 27 years ago, but I am very clear that it has never happened in my memory. All the frozen influence turned into a silver light, drilling into Nick's palm, but it looked like a piece of colorless crystal. Of course, this is not something that happened in this world, but it has indeed become history. A mysterious person wrapped in a black robe stood beside Nick. This is the history of another parallel world. And the only history. Oh! Nick, who had been acting very calm, finally raised his head. Why, Because the worlds that do not belong to this world have all been destroyed. The black-robed person's voice was a little louder. Don't you always wonder why this world would have an irreversible disaster? It is because your history is wrong, not in that person's script. You are a parallel world, you do not have this past. I think we are not the only world with a different past. Yes, but you are the last one. The black-robed person's voice was hoarse. He raised his head and looked at the sky. At this time, it was not clear whether it was day or night. The sky was as bright as day, but the sun that occupied half of the sky had disappeared without a trace. Replacing it were countless stars, big or small, dim or dazzling, densely packed, crawling over the entire sky. There are as many parallel worlds as there are possibilities, but now. He pointed at the projection crystal in Nick's hand. In the history before this, there are only two possibilities left. There are only two possibilities left. Very soon, there will only be one. That is an infinite world. So darkness and destruction are also infinite. The black-robed person's voice was dry as if there was sawdust in his throat. From that moment onwards, there is only history left. Unchangeable. Past history. From the birth of the earth, from the beginning of mankind. From the moment he descended to the moment you saw it, all that was left was the world line he had chosen. It could no longer be changed. That's why we're going to be destroyed, Nick said bitterly. Because our history isn't the one he chose. Only by erasing our existence can this world be controlled by him in a fixed orbit. Yes, killing the infinite possibilities of the universe, leaving only one fixed fate in the multiverse. But I don't understand, why did you come here? Nick looked up at him and asked in confusion, We resist to fight against death and destruction, then why are you resisting? For the sake of hope. The black-robed man sighed as he looked at the sky. If one were to look into the distance, the place where Nick was would rapidly shrink, and a yellow sphere that had been penetrated would appear. That was the dried-up Earth. If one were to look further, one could see countless stars distributed over millions of light-years. Hundreds of trillions of stars converged into an endless sea of light, like a concentrated sea of stars. Countless stars burned nuclear fuel, gathering the light into a highly concentrated photon colloid, forcing mankind to rely on the distorted space barrier outside the Earth to divide the solar system and the Milky Way into two universes. The black zero light speed deadline. It protected mankind in the thousands of planets around the Earth. Tens of thousands of stars the size of the Earth cracked like an eggshell, and highly concentrated burning nuclear matter was quickly torn from the stars, and then spread at an unimaginable speed into the void that was measured in light-years. It was like a black gap, swallowing the matter of the stars. Then an extremely brilliant pair of wings extended from the star and unfurled in the dark vacuum. Then a second, a third, and an endless number. If humans were to describe this astronomical unit that suddenly appeared, they might use angels to describe it because they were too similar, and also because these celestial bodies or lives were completely made of highly materialized light. But the real name of these things was Sephiroth. In other words, the outflow of divinity. Or an even more tongue-twisting name, a noun that was simply defined by human science. Star quantum phenomenon evaporation cloud collapse intelligent life object. In essence, it was the intelligence formed by the collapse of the highly energized and evaporated part of the stellar matter. It could also be said to be the soul of the sun. Life was born in countless stars in the universe like a plague. Their survival was exchanged for the destruction of other life. The space defense system is overloaded by 13%. The gravity around Sephiroth is too strong. There are many stars with the weight of hundreds of thousands of suns within 90 light-years of us. Their gravity has already distorted the space. Our space barrier can't last long. Find a way to stop it. This supernova that is about to explode is about to form a black hole. How can we stop it? According to the data, there aren't many of these giant celestial bodies in the entire universe. There are only 6 of them. The headquarters has already numbered them. GC 268, Michael, Ku 907, Gabriel, BD 342, Raphael, AK 213, early, the powerful material force distorted the space, making the barrier that protected humans shake. Just with pure mass, the 6th Sephiroth, with the closest mass, almost collapsed the fragile barrier. But now the situation was not any better. The strong gravity had distorted the light in the surrounding tens of thousands of light-years. Like a dead line spreading, a large area of the universe suddenly turned into darkness. On Earth, it was the opposite. They found that the light in other areas of the universe had disappeared. This meant that they were already in a forming black hole. It was difficult for the light to escape this area. What's the situation? Nick frowned and asked a staff member next to him. Even though he had experienced despair several times, the staff still could not face everything calmly. He panted a few times and said nervously, "They've surrounded us. Tens of thousands of Sephiroth have appeared outside the warning line. The reason they haven't come close is because the gravity around the existence of a seraph is too terrifying. Even other stars would be torn apart if they're not careful." "They are not unapproachable," the black-robed man suddenly interrupted. Nick stared at him. "What do you mean?" "Don't forget their essence. Sephiroth is a quantum life form, formed by the quantum plague Genophar after it infected the star's light source. Although War Skynet used the intelligent star's matter as its shell, it's just a layer of clothes. Their essence is a quantum life form and they have no mass." "You mean they can swarm us all at once when they are naked?" "If I have to use an analogy, yes. There are more stars in the universe than there are people. Humans have been relying on the mutual influence of the gravity of stars to prevent us from meeting several Sephiroth at the same time. You know, once celestial bodies of similar mass get close, the changes in their orbits will soar geometrically. The limit that humans can calculate is 3 celestial bodies. I know it's the problem of 3 bodies. The limit that Sephiroth can do is 6. They can control 6 stars of similar mass that have a serious influence on each other. If the mass difference is relatively large, it will inevitably happen that a large mass celestial body will tear apart a small mass celestial body. This is also the advantage that humans have for survival. But this is an illusion." The black-robed man shook his head and said, "The right of human survival has never been in our hands. The one who really decides our time is him. You have always been unwilling to tell me what kind of disaster we are facing. Now that we have reached this point, can you tell me?" Nick asked calmly. "Sephiroth, or the Archangel disaster, is just a disaster in this world. In other worlds there are 5 great gods. The Avengers have not been destroyed, the astral gods have returned from the depths of the universe, and the mutants have reappeared. They are not a hopeless disaster at all. There are many existences that can be their enemies." The black-robed man seemed to be immersed in the memories of the past. "Even the 4 horsemen who created them are not invincible. Many times we have destroyed War Skynet, polluted death, fought against famine and the Zerg to the end of the universe, and fought against the plague. Although we have lost many times, it is not as if we have not won. We've defeated the Terran insect tribe and the Blade Queen. We've destroyed a high-speed civilization that had a timeline that was 1,200 times longer than ours. We've destroyed the Tinder Origin, killed the Undead Calamity, fought a decisive battle against the Titan Giants, and perished together with the entire physical world that was controlled by Skynet. We've sacrificed hundreds of millions of lives to pollute the quantum thoughts of death. From the beginning of the Big Bang to the end of the world, we have created countless miracles and ignited sparks in the endless darkness. However, these worlds have only one ending in the end, and that is to be erased from the timeline. This is the enemy we have to face, the most dangerous disaster in this multiverse." Chapter 243. Sometimes, threats came silently. Nick, who faced the twin threats of the portal and solar storm over Manhattan on Earth, would never and never would have thought that Chun-Ong was stirring waves on a much larger scale. The silence he was wary of was the omen of a greater storm. Marvel was never a one-dimensional world. It was like a colossal, twisted monster that brandished countless tentacles, with complex parallel worlds forming a complicated multiverse system. There, the timeline convergence led by Chun-Ong was coming in full force. Skynet of war, mutants of famine, the Four Horsemen and their terrible creations were faithfully carrying out Chun-Ang's will, compressing the living space of the multiverse bit by bit, forcing everything in this world to the orbit set by Chun-Ong. To a one-dimensional being like Nick, all of this was naturally undetectable. Even if dozens of Nicks of parallel universes were blasted to smithereens at every moment, for the Nicks of other timelines, the effect was merely a lesser possibility in the future. They could not even detect such a threat. But against those terrible beings of higher dimensions, the war had already begun. In outer space, millions of kilometers away from the black-robed man and Nick, the white-clothed Chun-Ong stood silently in the vacuum, maintaining the same speed as Earth. With Earth as a frame of reference, he stayed right above New York. If the entire solar system was a frame of reference, Chun-Ong was moving at an astonishing speed of several hundred meters per second, although that speed was nothing in the universe. Over 19,000 of our wars have taken place above that city. Does this planet, this city, have any special meaning to you? Across from Chun-Ong was a human-shaped miniature of the universe, as if what he was facing disdained to appear with a human's mentality. He looked like a violently shifting universe, filled with chaos, heat, and non-elemental matter that was a storm of rays. Curiosity shouldn't be an emotion you possess, eternity. Chun-Ong called out his name, one of the 5 great creator gods of this universe. A true higher dimensional life form, an abstract god born at the moment of the Big Bang. You, the embodiment that represents the sum of time in the entire universe, will probably never have such a thing as curiosity, much less have such superfluous things like doubt. Of course, the eternal would not be curious. It did not even have the emotions unique to life. Rather than saying that it was a life, it was better to say that it was a viral concept collection of the coordination mechanism of the universe. The most perfect one was like swallowing star with complete emotions and self. She would become a true virus. She was almost like the goddess of death. She was like a god. She was equivalent to an incomplete life. Both eternity and infinity were far from the state of the goddess of death. It was difficult to distinguish whether it was a mechanism of the universe or an individual emotional virus. Most of the time we fight in our true forms, but sometimes you will use your human body. We are the same existence. Why would you use the body of a carbon-based organism? Is it because you were one of them? It's the same for Star Devourer. Why do you need a body that can't accommodate you? Eternity asked doubtfully, or pretended to be doubtful. The difference is probably that I have a personality, so I still need a human body. It's the same for Star Devourer. He also has a personality, so he won't exist in the form of a concept in the universe, so he has no choice but to maintain the survival habits of his race before he became a god of creation, devouring planets to replenish his energy. There were 2 contradictory things that affected Chun-Ong at the same time. Part of it was his existence as a higher dimensional existence. That kind of continuous evolution and all-encompassing instinct made him constantly have the tendency to return to absolute rationality, expanding infinitely in depth and breadth. On the other hand, the remnant part of him as a human also deeply affected him. The struggle when his personality was facing extinction allowed him to maintain many human behaviors and thinking structures, and he tried his best to solidify them. This contradiction between evolution and rigidity was a problem that even Chun-Ong could not solve. So I don't understand what you guys are thinking? The way of thinking of every higher dimensional existence should tend to be the same. What's the point of you and Star Devourer clinging on to the shell of a dead person, existing like a ghost? Death is also becoming more and more like you guys. What's so fascinating about those small, weak, shallow creatures that aren't even worth mentioning? Eternity asked, puzzled. No, it's not the same. Chen Ong shook his head. You think they're different from what I said? Eternity's virtual personality was becoming more and more vivid, actually learning to interrupt and answer first. No. Chen Ong denied again. I'm saying that we're different. To them, you're a higher dimensional creature, but to me, you're still a lower level existence. The difference isn't between you and them, but between me and you guys. To me, is there any difference between a lower dimensional god and a lower dimensional ant? No. Perhaps you think that there's an insurmountable gap between you and humans, so much so that you don't even bother to understand them. But to me, there's only a difference between you guys, there's no essential difference. My pursuit was actually very simple from the start. When you find yourself in a box, what you want to do is, of course, to jump out. But before that, you have to first do experiments, right? The leap from a lower dimensional creature to a higher dimension is the topic of my research. From this aspect, you can't even compare to humans. Chen Ong looked at him and said without a hint of reluctance in his tone. Eternity asked, why? Chen Ong replied, because you lack a possibility. From the Big Bang to the foreseeable future, you must be eternal and unchanging. Even the other three gods of creation are the same. They are huge, but rigid, without emotions, and will not produce variables that are beyond my control. Experiments under my control are meaningless. I need someone to bring me new opportunities, knowledge, ideas, and inspiration. This must be a miracle that is beyond my control, a miracle that leaps from a lower dimension to a higher dimension. Then it must first have unlimited possibilities, and secondly, it must be beyond my control. It is like a seed that I can't control, growing freely on suitable soil and giving me an unexpected fruit. But first, I have to filter out such a seed, something that can be called a miracle.